Welcome, everyone, to Let's Commiserate. I am your host, Sam, and...
Guess who's back? It's Dave.
It's Dave! He's at it again, folks!
Back at it again.
Hey, welcome back.
Very happy to be here. I cannot begin to describe to you verbally, just how excited I am to be here.
I would like to take a moment to just say I was right. I predicted that you would be back in 4 episodes, and I'm pretty sure this is 4 episodes later.
I think it's 5. I'm just going to say 5, just say 5 to be controversial.
I might have even said 4, maybe 5. We'll go back to the tape. But
sure.
The point is you are back.
I am.
And
look at that.
Look at
is lo and behold. Wonder Twin powers activate.
Married people unite. Yeah, man. So let me ask you the question that all newlyweds love to get asked.
I'm a little scared.
How's married life?
It's good.
It is good. Right?
It's good. It's a loaded question with a loaded answer, but I think overall, yeah, it's good.
I can't stand that question because I just want to tell people, I don't know, how's single life? Or just how's your life? In general,
the thing is, for you, I don't know. For us, I think we get that question a lot more from married people.
Typically from married people,
Single people typically are like, hey man, how are you?
It is typically married people.
Married people are like, oh, because I honestly, and I'm coming to appreciate, they don't know what else to talk about.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, how are you? How's your wife?
Mm-hmm.
Got any big plans for the... Well, they're like, I'm like, okay, we need to stop this small talk. You're my friend. We can, you know...
Well, married people, they tend to be like, how are you? How's married life? Yeah, but how's married life?
Oh, I love it when you do the same question twice, but with more force. It means, no, I love you, and I care about you, and I sincerely want to hear your unfiltered opinions about things.
Yeah, and
sometimes I give them an honest answer.
Well, yeah, it's like, what are you going to do if I say, it's actually really hard, and I thought it would be much better, and we're just so unhappy, and then the other person kind of be like, oh, well, I gotta go.
That right there. Usually there's there is 5 to 6 seconds of just awkward and then there's the well, and you can just tell they're processing, trying to catch up.
Yeah.
And then by that point you stall them with the I'm just kidding. And they're like, oh, ha ha ha, and they do a little bit of forced laugh.
Oh, thank God. Or what if they had started to say, like, actually, we have those same problems. And you're like, no, I didn't actually mean it.
Quickly walk away. That's the best answer to any situation.
Yeah.
Just walk away.
Yeah.
But not from your wife.
Mm-hmm.
That's the worst possible thing. Well,
wow, you're learning
situation
so fast.
Depending. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking now.
I hope Jess is listening to this. Jess, congratulations. Your wedding turned out very nice.
I was telling Aaron about it today. I got a haircut.
Wow.
Right? It doesn't look great.
I got a haircut over the weekend, too. Yeah.
We were talking, and I'm like, I have no regrets with my wedding.
Yeah.
I know it was not everybody's, first...
Not everybody's, preference or cup of
exactly. There were a lot of strong opinions about it, and I'm like, no, this is what Jesse and I have thought about. And I don't know, we've talked about this. I don't think we've talked about this on the podcast. Anytime somebody was like, oh, are you doing thus and such?
We did talk about it, yeah.
A reception dinner. Are you doing what? Anytime that topic came up, we'd be like, no. The person would be shocked. Then I would explain, no, we thought about this and this and this, and so we're doing this instead. Mm-hmm. And every single person I talked to said, huh, that makes sense. Right. And I'm like, yes, that's what a wedding should be. It should be logical, and you're like, oh,
well, that's really about
those reasons.
Yeah.
For our circumstances, for what we want, for what our guests want. This is the catch-all. This is the best of the best.
It's really about, as long as the bride and groom had fun, then who cares? And I think as long as it's not
To be fair, there's a balance.
There's a balance. And what I mean to say is,
as long as the day is not just an inconvenience to your guests, like it may not be what your guests want. Like, hey, would we have been able to throw an incredible and epic dance party for your reception? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But we have thrown our fair share of parties. Yeah. And, you know, I think for a lot of people, the wedding is like the one chance they think they have. But no, you kept your wedding simple, but it was still beautiful.
For those that don't know, we did a small wedding a small wedding ceremony, about 150 people, and then we just had coffee and snacks. We had now, to be fair, I'm gonna brag about this a little bit because we had a local store, Adams, cater the place.
Oh, Adams is nice. Yeah.
An amazing spread.
Yes.
Italian salamis and cheeses and meats and veg, and it was amazing. And then we just stood around talking and snacking for the next like hour or two. We had little to-go boxes for those that need to leave. It was fantastic, and everyone felt. The people that I've talked to, they're like, you respected all of your guests. You gave everybody a little bit of your time.
Yeah.
And, you know, because sometimes that happens. I went to a buddy's wedding a month or two ago, and it was fantastic. The wedding was fantastic. The dinner was amazing. They had dancing and stuff after. But I did not see him the entire day.
Well, you and I didn't talk until like the very, very end.
We didn't. Your wedding, we didn't talk.
Not really, yeah. But I was like, I think also we see each other enough. So I was kind of
fine.
I will say, because the food turned out really, really nice at your wedding. As the one in charge of cleanup, though, it took us 2.5 hours to get out of there.
Sorry.
But I was happy to do it.
Actually, I haven't heard any of those stories.
Oh, there are stories I can't talk about on camera. But it, like, you know, I kind of started off trying to make it like very organized. Like, okay, everybody, make sure you take a to-go container, and everybody will get like an equal.
By the end of it, it's like.
By then, I was like, just get it out, get it out, go. But the food itself was still good.
I know we took it
because I think the plan was
tray of meats and.
I think we could have sent you more because it was like, all right, I think there was enough food for like twice the amount of people that were actually there, and so it just became a question of like. What do we do with all of this?
We over-ordered.
I mean, I think that is better than the alternative, which was fine. We also, and like, you know, a group of us, I think, 6 of us, Samantha and I and 2 other couples that were close with Dan and Em and Clay and Bridget. We planned it like, we knew there was not going to be a reception, but we still made a full night of it. Like we went out to dinner as a group of 6 afterward, and still
people planned on that day,
which is fine. Like you can easily do that.
We're gonna go dinner.
Yeah. But yeah, it turned out really nice. I got something very interesting in the mail today.
Oh no. Oh, today?
Today.
Wow, the postal service is really slow.
Sending a little note with a huge thank you, David and Jess Rodish. Oh, I didn't look at the front of it. Oh, that's nice. That's
right.
Look at your widow's peak in this picture.
Have an amazing widow's peak. It's gonna get better with balding.
It's very defined.
It's hey, look right here. It used to be better or less bad, and then anyway.
I think it's.
Can we just stop talking about
No. Okay. Truly, yours has stayed the same ever since I've known you. I've been paranoid about my hairline.
Your hairline is fine.
But like anytime I get paranoid about my
His
hairline,
hairline is fine, right?
No, anytime I get paranoid about my hairline, I go look at old pictures and I'm like, oh wait, my hairline has just always been bad.
It's always been like.
I've always been a 5 head.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
You know?
Still.
It's fine, right, guys?
You're fine.
But we got our thank you card at the mail today. It's very... Man, I want to make it into a paper plane.
That was all Jessie. She was super creative with all the little paper goods.
I will admit, we are still... I know we got most of our thank you cards like for our friends in the immediate area out, but for our friends like way out of state, we're still working on them. It's so time.
I didn't realize how many, like, just how much time goes into thank you cards for a wedding.
Handwritten. It takes time. Yeah, it is time consuming sending out the thank you cards. Now I have more respect because I have gotten thank you cards very well past someone's wedding date and be like, wow, that took a while.
Yeah.
I will never judge that again because, man, especially when you have, in addition to your in-person guests, you have hundreds of people on Zoom.
Yeah, I don't think, unless you're going through it, I don't think you fully understand, especially the impact of the modern wedding. Because I mean, and this has been a huge conversation I've had with a lot of friends over the last couple of months, like the cost of wedding and the expectations that come with a wedding. And I love John. John V actually broke it down. He's like, the big weddings come from a society 60 years ago when the invitation used to say, like Bob and Sally Smith invite you to the wedding of their daughter.
Yeah.
And the entire wedding, like invitees are all of their friends. And it was a community event. But part of that was the parents were paying for everything. So it was an excuse for the parents to throw a party for their kids. But now, fast forward 50, 60 years, the kids are still expected to carry this enormous, like, monstrosity of inviting all their families and friends and extended friends and people that they've, like, met once to this giant elaborate celebration and this dinner and this reception and this party and stuff. And you're like, where did all of these and granted, this is coming from a Western culture, like American society, and you're like, where did all of this expectation come from?
Well, I will say the media and entertainment industry really did us a disservice growing up. Every single 90s sitcom or movie
Hallmark, I blame you.
Portrayed weddings as they were always this big, extravagant event. Like they had 300 people at their wedding. Father of the Bride.
It's so different.
Father of the Bride. Really?
We watched it before the wedding. Like when
so did we.
This movie is so funny. And then we watched it after and we're like, oh my God.
You sympathize with him.
It's a documentary.
You sympathize with him more than anyone else in that movie. Like growing up, you're raised to believe that he is the unreasonable one.
He's the bad guy.
And then you realize like how much weddings cost.
And then you realize Steve Martin. I love the bit where he's like, he died. We don't have to invite him. Dude, I died.
He's like, that's great.
Check. Did anyone else die?
Well, there was a part like he finds his daughter has fallen asleep while reading a bridal magazine that gives tips on how to have a wedding on a budget. And it says like, cater the food yourself, have a friend take the pictures. I'm watching that scene again as an adult thinking, those are actually really good ideas.
Like, pause that. Pause that.
Write that down.
Screenshot it. Like,
yeah. So I don't know. I think we were raised to believe that, much like how, when you watch teen movies from the 90s and early 2000s, prom is always portrayed as like, they rented out like a country club and it's so extravagant. My school had the prom in like the cafeteria.
You went to prom?
And I didn't go to prom, but I know that nobody wanted me. No, I was kidding. But they, most schools in my area where I grew up, at least, prom was always like in the cafeteria. It was always super cheap. Like, they got the students had to help blow up the balloons.
Because, I did correspondence school. I was homeschooled for the majority, for the entire time.
Finally, he says it on the podcast.
Well, we're here now. Mm-hmm. But it was a shocker to realize, I'm like, oh, you had 4 proms a year? I was like, I thought it was an annual event.
Oh, you mean like there was a homecoming?
I didn't realize there was, talking to other I guess kids, adults now.
Other normal.
They were like, oh yeah, there was like the summer prom, there was like the graduation prom, there was like the winter ball prom.
Well, yeah, they weren't all.
I didn't realize the prom was a year thing.
Well, they weren't all proms. There was like the homecoming dance, which was like the back to school dance. No, it's true. It's true. Like, there's the homecoming dance, which is like the back to school dance.
Right.
There's the spring fling, the sprong flong, the sprong flong dance, which is, just this, literally the spring dance. Then there's the prom. I think they would also do a dance, either winter ball or a Valentine's Day dance. But yeah, right. Prom was like, the apex,
right?
Of all of the dances. So
all right, it must have changed because I've talked to some people and they're like, oh yeah, we had 4 of those. We had a prom,
but not all of them were called prom.
I was like, I don't know if It might be a regional thing. I don't
It
know.
might be. I don't know.
Look, you can take your weird
Listen.
school time festival.
Listen. I was raised on like Lizzie McGuire. It was always like, who are you going to spring fling with? You know.
You watched Lizzie McGuire?
Who didn't watch the Lizzie McGuire movie? Still hits so hard. Hey now, sing it, Dave. Anyway, don't act like you don't know what I'm talking about. If I post this bit on TikTok, my fellow millennials are gonna come out of hiding and finish the lyric for me. Okay, they are.
I always do.
They usually do.
Most
Okay, speaking.
well, like if you say a lyric, they'll finish it.
Yes.
Typically.
Speaking of TikTok,
We wanted to talk.
yes, one of
my greatest regrets in life. I love Jessie dearly. I love her.
As you should.
As I should, as a wife. I am very sad.
as a wife, you should.
As a wife. I missed the entire Andor season 2 premiere to finale with you.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's
now.
talk about that. So you've caught up on Andor.
I caught up on Andor. I've watched the entire thing. So turns out, and I tried to convince Jessie to watch like Andor and stuff, and I started her on season 1 and stuff. So and I didn't realize this about her. She does not like tension, like drama, at all.
Oh.
Like episode, I think 1, she like burst into tears and she's like, "Yeah, I can't watch this. This is too stressful." And I said, "Okay,
Man, if
that's
she can't
fine."
handle episode 1,
I'm like,
yeah,
we
that's
are
probably
not pushing episode 2, or season 2 at all. So I was like, okay,
because episode 1, like nothing happened.
I love you, I really do, but no offense, I'm gonna put my headphones in and finish season 2 now. Thanks.
She might get along with my dad in the sense that like the only show my dad really likes to watch is America's Funniest Home Videos, because nothing bad ever happens. You know, it's not stressful. It's not sad. It's just, I don't want to watch things to feel sad, man. You know, I'm like, okay, fine, fine. Dad. I'm
I
like,
can see him saying that. I don't watch things to feel sad.
fine,
Like,
you do you.
I
There's nothing
watch
wrong with
things
that. Yeah.
to escape my real
Yeah.
life, which means I watch things to feel something. Okay.
So, but you did manage to catch up.
So I caught up. I watched all of season. Flawless. Tony Gilroy is the greatest, and I dare say this, Tony Gilroy is the greatest director of our modern generation.
Wow, that is.
Just the amount of the second by second tension for the entirety of season 2. Now, granted, I will give you. I talked to Nick last week about it, and we were talking. He's like, bro, I was trying to get into Andor, and I watched season 1, and I got to like episode 2, and even my wife was like, "Man, this is boring," and I just called him out. I'm like, "Bro, finish the season."
Okay, I'll cut it out. But Nick
Hoover.
Oh,
Nick Hoover. He's like, couldn't get into it. It was too boring. It was too.
he couldn't get into.
He couldn't get into it. I'm like,
I don't understand. Like, and you and I were talking about this on our episode where, Andor does it in 3 episode arcs, and typically the first 2 episodes of each arc are very slow.
yes.
But the payoff that you get in the 3rd episode of each arc is more than worth it. Like the build up, you realize, oh, that's why they were showing me all of this. That's why I needed to sit through those 2 episodes. And the payoff you get in the 3rd episode is just
More than worth it.
It's worth the price of admission.
Big time.
Because Samantha, I was surprised. I did not think Andor would be her taste at all, but she was glued. She was absolutely glued. And that's how I know that Andor is a pretty good show, because I use her as kind of like my...
Well, I know we've talked...
She's like the voice of the modern audience. And
If she doesn't like it, she falls asleep. If she watches it,
like,
it's good. If
the second I see her start scrolling on Instagram, I know the show has failed. Yeah. And she was just glued. Now the Gorman massacre was a little much for her, and I understand that. I understand.
That was a lot.
Even for me, I was like, whoa, okay, I get it. It's going on a little too long. I get why we need to see it. I totally get it. But for me, it crossed that line of like, hey, I want to watch TV to escape reality, and it was just feeling a little too.
Sorry, you didn't want to watch Tiananmen Square on in Star Wars.
It was brutal. It was brutal. But yeah, I mean, like I remember that was only the second episode in that arc. I remember like, oh, there's still another episode. I don't have the stamina to make it through. I can't laugh. Third episode. But then it had Mon Mothma's escape and everything, and that was a.
Sorry, the whole and I know you guys already reviewed these few episodes and stuff, but the whole
we got to catch it.
between the wedding ceremony on Chandrilla and the back and forth and the it's incredible storytelling.
Yes.
It was a bit overt. It was a bit much. It was a bit drawn out. But the storytelling is just.
I was really happy. I was really happy because my fear going into the second season was that they would have bought into the hype of season 1 a little too much, and it would have just jumped the shark. But it maintained the quality of season 1 and then some. Like they stayed true to what they had set out to do from the beginning, and it was one.
Kind of want to bring this up because of who was the if we ever get an audience with Kathleen Kennedy, I think this is an amazing case study in what a TV show should be.
Who was that?
Who is the girl that wrote the director for Acolyte?
Oh, we're really gonna. I will not dignify this episode by discussing the Acolyte on it. Oh yeah,
Leslie Headland. In interviews with them and stuff, and I think this is what really failed for the entire Acolyte series, was they rewrote the show. They did pre-screening tests for like episode 2 and 3, and they said, oh, the audience doesn't like that. Oh, the audience doesn't like that. Oh, the audience doesn't like that either. And we're like, yeah. And then there was the one, who was the one baddie? Lee Jung-jae, who played...
No, he played the good guy.
He played the stranger.
I forget his name, but he played
Jacinto?
Sure. He played
Manny?
Jason on The Good Place, but anyway.
Him.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, the audience is like that. We're going to they had a season 2 written.
Yes.
And they scrapped it and said, no, we're just going to shove up all of the villainous, like the villains and stuff, into season 1. Mm-hmm. They were literally rewriting the show.
As it was, yeah.
Yeah. Take a note from this man, Tony Gilroy, who's a writer. He's a producer and writer.
Storyteller, yeah.
He actually didn't even direct Rogue One. He was a
yes, I have things to say on that.
We're going to talk about this.
Say on that.
Tony Gilroy was a writer, which means he wrote Andor 1 and 2 while he was writing Rogue One, which the whole series, the whole storytelling, all of that was built. And I understand Hollywood has issues with writers, and especially last year with the whole writer strike, I understand that there's kind of a little bit of a stagnation with creative ideas. But I feel like Disney especially is floundering in this little bit of all that they can do. And I was talking to some friends even last week about it, and they're like, why is Disney only able to make live action?
Oh, they don't know what else to do. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, there's a writer's strike. They don't have anybody that can do anything else. Oh, let's remake The Little Mermaid. Let's redo Lilo and Stitch. Let's
do Snow White again. Yeah.
Let's do all of these movies that are perfectly fine, perfectly good, movies in their own right, in the vault. Mm-hmm. We're going to bring them back. We're going to recast everybody, ethnically diverse, no matter what character they were, we're going to recast them. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to just make it a live action. And you're like, what?
And then we're going to blame the audience if they don't like it. Like, oh, see, we knew that you had prejudices and this and this.
You produce movies and films, it's for the audience to enjoy them. So if the audience doesn't enjoy them, then you as a film producer have failed.
Well, I have to say, too, I thought Andor would be the one thing to unite the Star Wars fandom, but there is still a faction of Star Wars fans that just don't want to admit that they like this show. And
I like
they
the
really,
way you said that.
they don't want to admit it. So to go back to what I was saying about TikTok earlier, one of our
throwback.
Well, one of our TikTok clips is gaining a lot of attention right now because we talked about Andor. So I got a comment on this particular TikTok clip. In this clip, I say, we love Filoni, but, and then I go on to just say, one thing I don't like about his production choices. Even though I said, we love Filoni, I got a comment that said,
Do you have it here?
I don't have it in front of me, but
He has a photographic memory, so it's fine.
I will flash it on the screen. I will flash it on the screen.
Go into your mind palace and do the thing.
I said, we love Filoni. I got a comment that said, also, now we hate Filoni.
I literally just said, I love Filoni like 2 seconds ago.
And that to me, I got a comment that to me just sums up the current state of the Star Wars fandom, where it is the Sith mentality. If you're not with me, then you're my enemy. They deal in absolutes. I said we love Filoni, but I just don't like this one thing he does. Apparently, if you love a director, you have to love everything they do. Listen, I can still love George Lucas, but not like his dialogue. I can still love George Lucas, but not love Jar Jar Binks. I can
like
and
you know what
and I can still love Dave Filoni, but not love all of these cameos and celebrity cameos.
Yeah, they're getting a bit egregious.
So it's just like
Mandalorian season 2 to
3. 3 was the really bad one. But and like again, I'm trying to I always have to make sure I word things so that I can't offend any Star Wars fandom here. But
Look,
it's just amazing to me how the Star Wars fandom, we will just find ways to fight with each other for no reason.
I was actually
I can like Andor and Dave Filoni stuff.
I was watching I think it was a TikTok, Instagram, and they talked about, it was a behind the scenes interview with George Lucas, and he talked about how and I know this is a bit off target, but they talked about how he's like Ian's Star Wars episode. It was an interview with Mark Hamill, and they talked about how in episode 6 they have the pyre for Darth Vader, and they're like, we have to burn his body. And Luke was like, why do we have to burn his body? And George Lucas was like, the Star Wars fans are so intense that if we don't show them the body literally being burnt, then they're gonna start doing some crazy fan theories, or they're and then lo and behold, fast forward 20, 30 years, you have the whole prequel or trequel trilogy,
Sequel trilogy.
whatever that word is.
There are too many trilogies.
Poe Dameron and his dialogue, which is just so bland, is like, well, somehow the Emperor has returned. And you're like, how is this possible? And I think there's just so many factors involved, because you have such diehard fans, you have so many passive fans, you have so many loyalists, you have so many ambivalent fans, and then you have this, George Lucas and Dave Filoni definitely have a vision for what the Star Wars universe that they want. And then you have Disney, which is kind of this overarching mouse.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is they have bottom lines. They have bottom lines that have to be met. And if the fans don't respond, or if there's a production failure, stuff, you can lay the blame wherever you want it to be. But I go back to Tony Gilroy, and I say he pleased everybody, and I think made Disney happy. Yeah. He made the fans happy, which honestly, and I know we haven't gotten into our Rogue.
We haven't even
started the movie.
Yeah,
it was tough watching this movie because Andor 2 was so good.
Well, we'll get into that. We'll get into that. I just want to say one more thing.
else?
I just want to talk about one more thing before I get into
One more
our review here. If you guys haven't already gathered, this is going to be a long episode. So, grab a snack, curl up on the couch, do what you got to do because it's going to be
like highlights reel, but at this point, you're in it for the long haul.
So, I how much of a Knights of the Old Republic loyalist I am.
I do in fact.
Yeah,
God bless BioWare.
And,
They've had their moments, but still lights up. Knights of the Old Republic was one of their best works.
So I was not allowed to have a gaming console growing up. Okay,
Hark.
because my parents rightfully knew that I would get addicted, and
They were smart.
But in recent years they've made Knights of the Old Republic available on mobile platforms, and a few years ago, they released the Sith Lords on mobile platforms.
I actually downloaded KOTOR 2 last week. I'm gonna do another replay
on
PC.
your Xbox on PC.
Yeah.
Well, so
Fantastic game.
it is, isn't it? Well, that's what I'm getting to. They released KOTOR 2 on iOS and Android. And when they released it, initially I was like, well, if you don't know the history, KOTOR 2 was released unfinished. It was, they were really trying to, well, listen. I was like,
No, listen.
I was like, did they release, the game as it was meant to be? Because when the mod was released for the restored content, it even had the backing of the creators like, hey, you know what? Yeah, they did it. Use that mod. But of course, they just released the traditional version of the game, which I did. My roommate at the time, he let me use his Xbox, and I played KOTOR 2 on Xbox there. And it was like, the unfinished version, which I still loved. I loved how darker it was compared to the first.
The second one was gritty.
And it was only the other day I was thinking about it. I was like, the restored content mod, it would be so incredible. Like, because I'm not going to get that game on my mobile device if I can't play all the content. Yeah. And lo and behold, they did find a way for you to get the restored content.
They did.
They released a version where you could download the restored content mod onto your iPhone. And
Holy crow!
Yeah.
What kind of emulator? Like,
well, you won't find it on the App Store.
Yeah.
Had to go to the website where I think it might be called Deadly Stream. That sounds bad when I say it out loud.
you know how URLs are. Yeah.
But they they released instructions on how to install it to your iPhone. Just hook your iPod. Wow, your iPhone to your computer. Yeah.
You still have an iPod?
And so I was like,
come to think of it, is Apple even selling iPods? I feel like they've just moved on to iPhones.
They might. While you're doing that, okay, wait.
Keep talking.
Apple iPod. No, it seems like
no. They must have discontinued.
Well, why would they keep selling iPods? So they released all the instructions on how to install the what?
I love this review. Top 5 best iPod touches for 2025. First edition, Apple iPad.
Oh, that's great. I still have my iPod Classic in my storage, sit up on somewhere. Yeah. No. Oh yeah, it's one of my prized possessions. So anyway, I got
popular opinion. The iPod Nano was terrible.
I was never jealous. I was never jealous of my friends who had iPod.
The big screen was.
I was like, the cover art. I loved scrolling through and seeing the different cover art. But so anyway, I was like, all right, I will get, KOTOR 2 for my iPhone, and I was like, it might be a risk trying to install this mod on my phone, but it works.
Wow.
And so that's what I've been playing through the past few days.
Nice.
And I am so excited to experience the game as it was meant to be.
The way,
yeah.
Because, I know KOTOR 2 suffered from... I know this isn't what we're here to talk about, but KOTOR 2 actually suffered from, on release, there were unfinished entire, progression, branches and stories and they just never finished.
There's a whole planet that you didn't get to go to in the version that they released. And so I've played through, the first couple planets. I glitched the game the other day. I I tried to rush through a certain portion where it's hard to explain. This was my fault. And then I ended up getting stuck on this particular planet. And I was like, oh no, this was because I tried to rush through this part too soon. Yeah. So I kind of had to start over.
No, the whole game?
Not the whole game, but like the
save point?
Yeah, like the end of the first planet.
Okay.
Which was, I mean, by the end, so actually, I was actually on my third planet by that point, so I had to go back too, but it's okay. You know, it's worth. And also, because I still don't have a gaming console to this day, but the way around it that I found is I still play it on my phone, but I screen mirror it to my TV.
So you use you screen mirror your phone to your TV, and then you operate it like a gamepad.
I'm using my phone controller.
It
works.
I don't like how smart that is.
It works. I was like, wait a second. I want to get the full gamer experience.
And that's what kills me is because like, and I read a fantastic article the other day about how like the death of the console, like the mobile apps, mobile streaming platforms, and especially like GeForce Now and Microsoft, they're starting to like stream games. Amazon, Luna, like there's a bunch of fantastic platforms for cloud gaming,
right?
Which is a huge. I mean, like $10 a month, and you get unlimited games. Like straight, like why would you not do that? That makes so much sense. Instead of dropping like $500, and especially with the new tariffs and stuff, like $600, $700, $800.
Apparently, they might be reversed now. Anyway, we'll go. That's not the place. I was just
breaking news today. You know, who knows?
Anyway,
but I mean, instead of dropping $600 on a new console, I'm like, you could just stream it to your phone.
I just mirror it to my TV, and I've got the surround sound experience.
I was talking to Kyle about this actually just the other day, and he's like, new games don't have the same storyline. They don't have the same draw.
Well, that's so Samantha. She's watching me play this game, and she was like, "These graphics are terrible." And I say, "Well, this game is 20 years old." I say it's 20 years old. I was like,
literally ran it on a potato.
But I told her, I'm like, what keeps this game enduring is the storytelling. Yeah. The storyline is like so incredible and holds up, and especially KOTOR 2 has that same gritty feel of even Andor.
Yep.
And so that
I saw this great meme the other day about like, you know, like enough with your graphics, enough with your like games with like, I'm not here for just the Frostbite engine. Okay, I am here for good storytelling.
Right.
Okay. And if you can't deliver that, then I'm not gonna waste my time on it.
Well, she's like, "Why are you spending so much time talking to the other people?" I was like, "You got to build up
You don't understand
the story, character development."
At the most fun.
At any rate,
get into
yes. At any rate, happy to have you back. I had some guests. I had quite a few guests in your absence.
I was really happy to see some of them,
and it was fun. It was nice having variety. It was nice having the variety.
I'm also glad to be back.
But
I wore my Star Wars shirt.
You're short.
I wore my Star Wars shirt.
Just one leg. But
for this, I'm so excited.
Yes, but welcome back. This would normally be where we would end a typical episode.
38.
Yeah. Guys, I told you it was going to be a long episode.
We haven't even started yet?
We haven't even started, but I don't care. This is a very special episode because we have been anticipating reviewing Rogue One since we started watching Andor and reviewing it on this podcast.
Can we put this in like the profile? Like the actual episode starts at like 45 minutes.
Yeah, I've been doing timestamps.
Okay, that's nice.
I've been doing timestamps in the descriptions. So we are going to get into this.
Andor 1 was released, I think we all knew, we're like, oh, this is the connecting pieces between, because there's so much between Rogue One and Episode 4 that you're like, okay, I see the pieces. It's like when you get the corners of a puzzle and you're like, all right, I see where the puzzle needs to be,
right?
But I don't have the full picture yet.
That's what this does for you. Before we get into it, I just wanted to ask you, before the rewatch, what were your overall thoughts and feelings about Rogue One?
Oh, that's a good question.
Oh, it really is.
And I understand that's why you ask it. Going into Rogue One, I think it's just good timing because you're coming out of Andor 1, you're coming out of Andor 3, you're back into Rogue One, which this is a movie we've already seen.
Right.
So it's there's characters and storyline and dialogue that you already know. It's kind of like watching episode 3 and episode 4 because you know what happens. So it's almost like reading the end of the book before you finish reading the rest of it. You know where it's headed and everything, which gives you a certain level of calm because you're like, I know the good guys win, the bad guys lose. But there's still this level of intensity and tension. And again, I go back. Tony Gilroy does an amazing job and John Knoll and Gareth
Edwards.
Mm-hmm. They do an amazing job at keeping this tension for a story that you already know the ending to.
Yeah. Well, it seemed when this first came out, a lot of people were saying this is the best, Star Wars movie to ever have been released. It's amazing. Now,
granted, that being said,
okay, I knew I was in the minority because when my brother and I went to see this movie together, my brother Ben, who was on the last episode of the podcast, the thing that we just could not get past was the CGI Tarkin.
That's what had you?
It was. I'm sorry. And I know that seems like a minuscule thing. I never had an issue with the story or anything else in the movie, honestly. But it was such a distraction.
The graphic?
It was such a distraction to the point where
how much he had though.
Yeah, and I'm like
a lot of screen time.
Yeah, and it was more of a distraction than anything else. But I will say, so I was more so indifferent to Rogue One when it first came out.
You were indifferent to the entire film simply because of 5 minutes, 10 minutes worth of CG.
It was also still a lot to digest that they were doing like these anthology films that were not connected necessarily to the main.
I do want to talk about that because in context, Rogue One, so you had Force Awakens that came out in 2015. That was basically just a recreation. It was part of the trequel.
They played it safe.
Played it safe. They really just remade Episode 4, just bigger, badder.
Mm-hmm. Which I don't know if we're gonna do a full episode as reviewing that, but go on.
Well, it's gonna be a tough. So then you move over to 2016. You had Rogue One, which was this incredible. And I actually kind of want to talk about a little bit of history of this. The Disney buyout of Star Wars happened in about 2012.
Correct.
So the story goes that after Disney's purchase of Lucasfilms, that was the Industrial Light and Magic, the Lucasfilms like incorporated the entire licensing, everything. John Knoll actually had, he
had worked for ILM.
He had worked for ILM for a long time. He was actually one of the camera operators and stuff who turns out his brother Tom Knoll and him actually developed Adobe Photoshop back in 1980.
That I didn't.
I had a year back in 1987. John Knoll, along with his brother Thomas, actually co-created Adobe Photoshop.
Good for them.
The software was originally developed by the Knoll brothers and then sold to the Adobe system. So this guy has an incredible background.
He's got a pretty good resume.
With just like graphic design and all of that kind of goes into seeing the invisible, especially in a digital format. So fast forward to 2012, 2013, he starts hearing about some of the early concepts for Star Wars movies under the Disney license. And like the good man that he is, he doesn't like any of them. So he begins to develop his own ideas. So he kind of weaves basically the story for Rogue One. He develops it into a 30-minute pitch. He tests it on a couple of other employees, a couple of other Disney execs, and they're all like, eventually he gets it to the point where they're like, yeah, that's good. That's the point that he goes to Kathleen Kennedy and says, hey, I have this idea, presents it, and she loves it.
Well, and to take into account here, around that time, I think this was before the Disney acquisition, a live-action Star Wars series was being planned under the supervision of George Lucas. Apparently, it was going to be called Underworld, and it was going to take place between Episode 3 and Episode 4, just showing they wanted it to have more of a film noir feel, kind of probably similar to the atmosphere that we ended up getting with Rogue One. And so John Knoll, he had apparently written this story as an episode treatment for this series, but I realized, no, that seems more like a full movie in itself. And so when when the opportunity came up to pitch that, that's what he ended up doing. Now, just to give more context on the production of Rogue One, I think what might be fairly commonly known among the Star Wars fandom is that the production of Rogue One was kind of a hot mess. And
Putting it lightly.
that is something that Disney seems to have gone to great lengths to sweep under the rug. It got me thinking, because I loved when we did our Phantom Menace review, I found that old DVD making of documentary that just laid everything out there. Every single thing. Like, it was like straight out of the camera.
We talked about that. They used to, during like film productions, they used to have a second camera just filming the production.
And I remember
how crazy it was.
they would advertise the DVD releases of... Sorry, folks. My Zoom settings got messed up.
Zoom settings? Zoom?
Well, not like the software, but like on my camera.
You should have.
I have to keep an eye on this.
Your audience.
Listen, we do not have a professional studio. We're doing the best we can.
We're casual hobbyists.
Imagine that.
Enthusiasts.
Imagine that.
Doing the best we can.
Anyway, just settle back in, folks.
Where are we?
Get a snack. Make yourself a drink. We've made ourselves spotchka mules.
Highly recommend.
Apparently, it's recommended to have ginger syrup. I didn't have that, so I just used maple syrup, blue curacao, which is the key ingredient, and vodka. It's passable.
The blue curacao really gives it that blue.
It does. Look at it. It just glows. Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Okay. So I was thinking back to the days when they would release the Star Wars movies on DVD, and they would advertise it like, with now, over 6 hours of bonus features, and wow, when am I going to have the time to watch all of that?
I remember seeing those advertisements and being like, as a kid, like, wow. Even as an adult now, I guess. Like, wow, I need to buy that box set because I want those 6 hours of additional behind-the-scenes features.
And that is just not what is done anymore. The closest I could find to like a making of documentary was just a compilation of these like 5-minute featurettes that were featured on the Rogue One Blu-ray set.
So much of it is
And that was
literally
compiled
made just for
into
streaming.
that was compiled into like an hour worth of material, and it's just such a shame because I feel like unlike previous documentaries where they would show you everything and it was like straight out of the camera, this is clearly so. This was clearly made with Disney standing right behind them. And it feels almost scripted. Whereas in the old documentaries, it's pretty commonly known that even the production of A New Hope was a living nightmare. They experienced so many problems. And in the Phantom Menace one, like we talked about, they talked about how production put them behind. George Lucas, they have a whole segment where George Lucas did not like the first cut of the movie. And they went back and fixed a lot of things. Rogue One is pretty commonly known to have had extensive reshoots. In any of the bonus material you will find on YouTube, anywhere, you will not find them owning up to any of that. All of these interviews, it almost feels scripted, where like, yes, this movie's amazing, the director was amazing, the script was amazing, Kathleen is amazing.
You can almost kind of see Kathleen in the back. Nine's like, she's like, you better say something. No,
She's like holding up a cue card,
I love Rogue One and all that it stands for.
And yeah, they used to be so forthcoming about everything that happened during production. And I respected that. Where it's like, this put us behind. We disagreed on this. Rogue One had 5 weeks worth of reshoots.
Wow.
Yes.
That's a lot.
And I'll get into that later. But it's just infuriating because whereas they used to kind of own up to their flaws, this was more like, no, everything was perfect.
Which I don't.
The Disney company is pure and wonderful.
Part of this is maybe just like the film making industry, because like George Lucas, when he first started, like you think of like THX 38, like some of his earlier stuff, like he was just a blossoming film producer and stuff, and now everything has become so, especially with the streaming era, like you have to be perfect on episode 1. Otherwise, you're going to lose streamers, you're going to lose viewers, and they're going to cut production. Not even like for season 2. They're going to cut production like halfway through your whatever you're working on.
Well, so this leads me to specifically those reshoots. And we're going to get into the summary of the film. Don't worry. I know this is like, an hour's worth of setup.
Already, yeah. Well,
But I went in like down into a rabbit hole here, and take nothing I say as like, the be all end all
he is not
facts.
gospel. It's okay. It's a personal opinion.
But,
And internet research.
well, we credit Tony Gilroy with
Yeah.
much of Rogue One's success.
We do.
And he is happy to take that credit. I love Tone.
However.
I do. But as I mentioned, in all of like the official bonus material for Rogue One,
Yeah.
including this hour and 8-minute long compilation of behind the scenes features, Tony Gilroy is not mentioned once. Not once in over an hour worth of material. And like the primary director, because Tony Gilroy did not get an official director credit for this. I think he might have gotten the screenplay credit.
Writer, producer.
He was a second unit director, or I'm sure I'm getting that wrong, but like an assistant director. He got some type of credit for that, as well as screenplay. But just to add insult to injury, at the end of this compilation of bonus material, they show a long list of, with very special thanks to this person, this person, this person. Carrie Fisher is included on this list, even though she was dead by this time.
Wow.
The estate of
She died in the end of 2014?
16.
16.
So right as this movie was being released.
It had to be before.
No, it was the end of 2016, I'm telling you. When did Carrie Fisher die? Look it up. We are about to see the truth.
This. Okay, 2016. Okay.
December 27th,
Whatever,
2016.
bro. It's fine.
So she was included on the with special thanks to, as well as the estate of Peter Cushing, who has been long dead by this point now. This is no offense to Carrie Fisher or Peter Cushing. Yeah, I get it.
Due respect.
I get it. There's a very extensive list of people to thank. Gilroy is not included on that list.
All.
Gareth Edwards, the director, is included.
Yeah.
Not even George Lucas is included on that list. And I say that because they do talk about him a lot. And he's typically included on a lot of lists like that because none of this would be here without George Lucas. But you know who is listed first in this list of special thanks to? Kathleen Kennedy. Who did next to nothing to make this film happen. She merely signed off and gave like a little input on one thing with this movie. Now,
Special
thanks.
How about
No,
no
this is
special
where,
thanks?
This is where it just keeps getting more and more interesting for me. Because, Kathleen's included, Carrie Fisher's included on this list.
Okay, I see Carrie. She just passed.
Yes, the entire they do say thanks to the entire cast and crew, but that's more of a blanket statement.
That's a very blanket. That just covers everybody.
So that led me to wonder what really happened with Tony Gilroy as far regarding his
This is getting spicy.
involvement in Rogue One.
So what happened?
And I found articles from that time because there were articles released like, hey, no, like at that time, there are reshoots happening of this movie Rogue One. Disney had even declined to comment on Gilroy's involvement at the time. Really? It was kind of like, what? No. And even in this documentary, quote unquote, that you see, it's like, no, everything went fine. They don't mention that reshoots had to happen even once. Like, no, we had no problems. Who's Tony Gilroy? What? Like, you're crazy. So let me just settle in. Okay.
No. I'm just sitting back. Please continue. Keep going.
The original draft, the first script of Rogue One, did not have everybody dying at the end. Spoiler alerts.
Spoiler alert.
Because apparently Gareth Edwards, the director, did not think Disney would approve of everyone dying. But then when, the first draft was showed to them,
If you know anything about Disney, of
course.
makes sense.
hey, we'll kill off people's mothers, but
Well,
that's where we draw the line.
Your mother gone.
But then they said, no, it would make sense that everyone would die because none of these people are in Rogue One. And
Glad logic finally ruled Disney.
Gareth Edwards said, oh, that's what he wanted to do all along. He just didn't think they would approve of it. Personally, to me, it feels like him just wanting to take credit. Like, oh, well, see, that's what I wanted. See, I wanted to have everyone die, but
Okay, keep
again,
going.
that's just
Keep
my
going.
speculation.
Let's not speculate.
Now, I will just read this quote from him. He said, there was an early version, the very first version, where they didn't die. It was just assumed by us that they're not going to let us do that. And then everyone read that first screenplay, and there was just this feeling of like, they got to die, right? And everyone at Disney were like, yeah, it makes sense. So the reshoots, mind you, were already worked into the schedule. And this is a common practice in filmmaking where they kind of factor in there might need to be some reshoots happening. So that in itself was not a surprise. But that was the point where Tony Gilroy was brought in by Kathleen Kennedy herself, actually. So we'll give Kathleen some cred there. She did say, hey, let's bring in my friend Tony.
Okay. She brought in Tony.
I couldn't find any comment from her about that. And the only really articles I found about Kathleen and Tony where he said when making Andor, she basically said, hey, do what you want. So thank you.
So she recognizes talent
Apparently.
in Tony, in Tony Gilroy specifically and only.
And Tony Gilroy, he had, pretty legitimate experience. He had worked on the Bourne movies.
Yep.
Gareth Edwards had, experience working on Godzilla movies, monster movies. So in these 5 weeks of reshoots, they drastically altered the ending of the movie. The original ending had only K2SO apparently was the only character to die. Everybody else, they're, where they ended up was kind of left ambiguous. Mm-hmm. Jin and Cassian were shown to maybe escape. But in that 5 weeks of reshooting, they changed the ending, including the epic Vader scene. As in going through the corridor.
They did that in the
reshoots. Now
That was not in the original?
that was not in the original. Now, because of these reshoots, a lot of people notice watching the trailers of Rogue One, there are so many iconic shots in the trailers of Rogue One that did not make it to the final cut of the movie.
At least for the fandom, that was a huge sticking point because there were so many. I mean, and that was a long trailer. It was like an hour and a half.
There were shots of Jin undercover.
That never ever seen in the movie.
Jin fighting a TIE fighter.
Single-handedly.
That doesn't happen.
That was kind of the one of the bigger moments.
Now, I want to clarify again. We don't know what really happened because there are conflicting reports here.
Oh, Disney.
And we don't know who made which call. Now, people credit...
Will we ever?
People give Tony Gilroy
There's no
credit.
Watergate. There's no,
Right. People give Tony Gilroy credit, maybe to a fault. Gareth Edwards, he did the bulk of the legwork for this movie. Tony Gilroy, if you read any interviews with him, he's happy to take credit for oh no, that movie was suffering. They needed someone to come in and save the day. Tones, I get it. That's your prerogative. Edwards, if you read recent interviews with him, he sounds a little salty about it. I can see why, actually. If somebody was kind of saying oh, hey, I came in, I saved your movie,
Understandably. I mean, we have had similar experiences with anyway.
But it has been all me. I've done everything.
Anyway.
Oh.
Anyway.
But
when a co-director comes in.
So Gareth Edwards, he said this was the most recent interview about it from a year and a half ago. He said Tony Gilroy came in and he did a lot of great work, for sure, no doubt about it. But we all worked together until the entire last minute of that movie. The very last thing we filmed in the pickup shoot was Darth Vader's corridor scene. I did all of that stuff.
That sounds a bit salty.
It seems a little salty. Seems a little salty.
Okay, can we...
Now, and this is the last thing I'll say.
Please.
A lot of people do want to see Edwards' original cut.
I would love to see Edwards' original cut.
Personally, I don't feel a desire to because I think having everyone or like the majority of people survive, it doesn't hit as hard as the ending would cut.
No, to be fair, I would like to watch it once with the knowledge, knowing that this is his take.
Right.
You know, this is his footage. This is his editing. You know, because I feel like that's a lot of. I was watching an interview the other day. I forgot who the guy's name was, but he redid the first 3 episodes of
Andor?
of Star Wars.
Oh, okay.
He did episodes 1, 2, and 3, The Phantom Menace, Attack the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith, and he compiled them all into a 1-hour movie. He cut out, and I forget the guy's name.
I think I heard about this though.
Anyway,
we'll look it up later.
And he's never released it. That's the thing. He's only ever shown like a handful of friends, and this thing has become legendary among the Star Wars fandom because it cuts out all of the monotony of the political government, of the romance between Anakin and Padme. Like, it gives you the highlights. They're like, okay, there is a relationship between them, but it really focuses on the driving moments of all 3 films. And they say that it is the quickest sum up of the Star Wars prequel series.
Right.
You can watch all 3 movies in one sitting, and you're like, okay, that I have an entire idea of what is happening.
You can see what could probably be cut.
And they've never been able to re-release it. And he actually never worked on the Star Wars production. He literally is just a producer-director. And he's like, I'm going to take these 3 movies and I'm going to re-edit them with the sequences that have already been released. I'm going to put them together. And I think that's one of the most incredible things about like directors and producers and stuff, is because you can change the entire outcome. You can modify an entire story just with a little bit of lighting, a little bit of color correction, a little bit of like careful editing. You can entirely shift the energy of a movie.
Right.
You know, and I don't think we always talk about Tony Awards or the Grammys or stuff for like sound design and music design. I don't think we talk about editing as properly. We talk about directing, which I think is a little bit different.
Well, I don't know if you got to see this, but one thing I found during Andor season 2 was we have Tony Gilroy and Dan Gilroy. Dan was one of the writers on Andor season 2. There's a third brother, Dan Gilroy's twin brother.
He has a twin?
He has a twin.
There's a twin?
Named John, who is also an editor.
Really?
On Andor and Rogue One, I think. But I was like,
there's so many Gilroys, and they're all so talented.
I know, honestly, that's amazing. But okay, shall we get into the actual plot of this movie? Because
can we actually get?
I have more production notes as we go, but it starts.
Let's just dig into it.
You immediately feel right off the bat that this is a separate story from the, I hate saying, the Skywalker saga. Don't get me started. But there is no opening crawl. And
this was one of the first movies to...
The first movie
to start that. Because this is not an anthology. This is not part of the saga.
It is an anthology.
Sorry, wrong word. It's not part of the saga series. This is a standalone.
Yeah.
This is a standalone film. So it doesn't need a crawl. Because, and actually... during the production, this entire film, part of Gareth's thing is this entire film lives off in Star Wars Episode 4, the opening crawl. It talks about the Civil War.
Yeah, and the Rebel spy.
First sentence in the crawl talks about the galactic, universe is in the midst of a civil war, and it's bad stuff. They always kind of hear like the 1920s radio announcer from
where's it?
In the 1920s. And this entire story came from that first, what was that Civil War like?
And I remember there was a misconception when this first came out, people saying it's the story of many Bothans died to get us this information. I was like, that's how you've just told me you are a surface level Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
Only because that is so not the case here. But either way, I remember... when this first started, there's no opening crawl, but they still show a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, so you're expecting an opening crawl.
You're kind of hoping
that it doesn't happen. But anyway, that is how you know we are in a standalone story here. And I just, sorry. I want to say, watching Andor season 2 before watching Rogue One, I highly recommend it because that's how Samantha experienced it. The way they are actually seamlessly able to transition from Andor season 2 to this movie was phenomenal.
I was amazed.
Even down to the music score. I was watching one of the behind the scenes featurettes. They were saying they intentionally made the score of Andor season 2 gradually more orchestral as it leads up to Rogue One, because by the time you get to Rogue One, it's very much ba ba ba.
The music for Rogue One is amazing.
Yeah, they do a lot of nods to the original trilogy score, which worked pretty well here.
It's so well done.
But even down to Cassian, when we see him in Rogue One, I had kind of made fun of in one of the last episodes how, all right, now they've got to age Cassian down 9 years because that's how long it's been since Rogue One. But it was seamless. But when we see Cassian's first scene in Rogue One, it genuinely feels like premiere of Andor season 3. I was so impressed. Just how Rogue One is able to easily and smoothly transition to episode 4, Andor season 2 perfectly transitioned to Rogue One.
And I remember seeing, it's kind of funny thinking back to when I first saw it, but when I first saw Cassian and stuff, I was like, man, this guy looks rough. I was like, man, this guy looks I don't know, they need to take him back. They need to put some more makeup on him or something. And then you see Andor 1 and 2 and you're like, oh,
that's why.
He's seen some stuff.
When he says at some point in this movie, he says, I lost everything. You actually know.
You're like, he has. Namely, get
everything.
All of that. And it's like, okay, did Edward,
Gareth,
there we go. Did Gareth know? Did Tony know during the writing? Did they know they were going to go back? We don't know.
Apparently, Tony and Diego Luna had mentioned it to each other during the shooting of Rogue One. Would be cool.
It would be amazing if they had.
Because Gareth Edwards had no involvement in Andor whatsoever. And that is one thing I will say. You can kind of see watching Rogue One where Tony's influence came in.
Yeah.
Not that it's a bad thing. Gareth Edwards did a phenomenal job. But it is interesting. And I will say, it was kind of hard when you've watched 2 seasons of Andor and it's so heavily focused on Andor. Samantha even said when we're all of a sudden focusing on Jyn, she's like, who's this chick?
I'm sorry. They roll in Rogue One rolled straight into because you gotta remember this was 2016. Cassian was not a character.
No.
K2 was not this was Jyn Erso's story. So to kind of hard shift back into her and her daddy issues and her family story and stuff. Okay, that was a hard shift.
I will say it's
Andor.
It's still really well done. It doesn't take anything away from her character
At all.
But I think because we've been so used to seeing things from Cassian's perspective,
Agreed.
Samantha and I said it feels like
Disappointed. I was sad to not see Diego Luna more on stage.
I can see that. For us, for me at least, I was like, Jyn now just feels like yet another girl in Cassian's latest side quest. Because he encountered so many different people throughout the Andor series.
Talked to a few, yeah.
Yeah. But it doesn't take anything away from her character. I think Jyn is...
So let's just... I don't think we've actually even talked about.
It's okay.
So in the first 30 seconds of the movie, you actually feel this palpable tension.
Yep.
Which between Gareth and Tony, say what you will, the tension they're able to build in Rogue One and Andor is just... It's incredible. So you see Krennic, General, I forget his name.
Director
Krennic land. And it was the first time we meet Galen Erso, who, as it comes out through the story, Galen Erso is a kind of a mad scientist, kind of like an Oppenheimer style, large-scale weapons designer for the Empire who has retired, who's living in the plains. He's left the Empire behind. So Krennic shows up with his brute squad of the Death Squad, which is the first time that we've seen in the Star Wars universe this empirical Death Squad show up, which is the lore behind them that they kind of retcon back is they have to be 6 feet tall. We've seen them in video games. They use the E11B. Like it's
But isn't this like they literally just painted the stormtroopers black? Even in the behind the scenes featurette, they admit this. Yeah. They just like, we said, whoa, what if... I'm telling you, go watch it. I'm telling you, go watch. Listen. I'm sure, as the fandom does, they go and create their own obsessive lore over it. All they did was paint stormtroopers black.
So they made.
Now again, it looks cool.
They added a couple of extra like gear and stuff, and they have like the green rim. Anyway, so storyline, bro. Krennic shows up and says, "Hey, Galen, the project has stalled. We need you to come back." And Galen's like, "I gave that up. I retired. I'm done building your weapon and stuff." And Krennic is like, "Look, we're gonna take you. We're gonna take your wife. We're gonna take your kid. We're gonna finish this mission. We're gonna finish building this weapon and stuff." At which point, you know, Galen has this entire like facade built and stuff. So his daughter hides. His wife, which I don't think she has a name.
She probably has like a full novel devoted to her by this point.
In the comics. So she runs up and says like, "You'll never get away with it." Yeah. So they shoot her. So now Galen has nothing except his daughter, which is now in hiding, waiting for Saw Gerrera, who they placed like a dial-up call to. So he's on his way.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Saw, we're dropping you a pin.
What you need to know. A top specialist weapons designer has been now kidnapped back to the Empire, and his only daughter is now being raised by a guerrilla, a
Gerrera.
a guerrilla Gerrera, a wild man.
An extremist.
Yeah.
Now, I will say this is the only thing that I wish they had kind of fleshed out a little more in this movie, because it's established that Saw kind of raises Jyn, but then abandons her at some point. I don't know. It's all kind of vague and not even reverent.
Hint at it because she's like maybe like 9 or 10 in the initial sequences. And then later on in the movie, she's like, "You dumped me at 16 to fight for myself." And then he defends it. He's like, "Look, people were asking too many questions. They knew who you were, blah, blah, blah."
It's interesting because I thought like in Andor, we might get like some throwaway line from Saw, like, "I abandoned a child," or something like this, like, "I was raising a child," something like that.
We're gonna talk about that a little bit,
but
because he talks about how much of an impact she had on him.
Like, he did care for her, and
but through the entire Andor series, we didn't see anything from her.
And I will say, one reviewer I follow on YouTube, his main gripe with this movie was like they kind of wrote the characters that they like to the point where they were engaging, but they couldn't make them too engaging because they didn't want you to get attached to them because they were all going to die.
Why? I don't understand why they don't make engaging characters because they're going to die.
I still found them engaging.
Real life happens.
I don't agree with that. I found them engaging still. Like, and Felicity Jones is a phenomenal actress. I thought she was so good in this movie. Like her interaction with Saw Gerrera, you feel that they do have a history between them. I just wish that we had seen like even just like a short montage. That's all I ask.
Talking about the production right now. We're talking about.
I will always talk about the production.
Saw shows so Krennic steals Galen over for the Death Star's production. Well, spoiler alert for this weapons.
We were talking about spoilers here.
At which point Saw shows up and he's like, "Come, my child, come!" And he basically adopts Jyn Erso.
Yeah. A flash forward.
Hard cut. Rogue One, title screen. Now we know, okay, the movie title, if you didn't already know what that was. Hard cut back, Jyn is in an Imperial prison.
I will say, it's such a tiny gripe. The Rogue One title just looks so cheesy.
Yep.
And it looks like I could have done it in like iMovie or something.
You could have done it in iMovie.
And one thing they keep doing throughout this movie, like they show like the location of each planet like at the bottom.
That was new. We've never seen that before in anything.
No.
They had the whole like...
I did not need to see it though.
Jedha or Jehu. And you're like, I didn't need...
But it happens like 10 times in this movie, like hidden rebel base, like this and this and this. It made me think... did your family ever watch Jag growing up?
No.
We did. And Jag was, like, that was one of its trademarks. Like, they would always show, like, Uganda, this and this, like this, that, and like
Very popular in like 2016. Like that's what all the Marvel movies were doing. They were doing the planet like just
okay. I will say a lot of these scenes and choices like that play off like their video game cutscenes.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Which is what we are attuned to.
I understand.
Like that's what we okay.
But we flash forward, and Jin is
We're gonna hard shift forward.
Jin is a bad girl, and this is one of those lines that was in the trailers that we didn't see in the final product. This is a rebellion. I rebel. I'm kind of glad they cut that stupid line.
Yeah. It's a little okay. Star Wars has always been known for their cheesy dialogue, but that's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
Okay. So you cut to Wobani. There's a Juggernaut scene. There's a whole prison riot. There's a break. The rebellion grabs Jin. You have this whole scene on Yavin 4 where the rebels kind of offer, General, I forget his name, Drehu, he offers her a fresh start. He's like, hey, look, we know who you are. We know your father was a weapons designer. We need an introduction with Saw Gerrera. If we have you, we need you to introduce us to him because we need to talk to Saw. And then you're like, okay, can't you just call Saw? Like we know you have his number.
Yo, I can give you his Instagram handle.
We need to talk to him without him shooting at us and stuff. Okay, great. So Jin signs up for this crazy mission where basic Cassian is going to take Jin to go make a formal introduction for this alliance to Saw Gerrera, which, having seen Andor 1 and 2, you kind of see like throughout the Clone Wars progression and the
because Saw was really the only like well-established character before this movie.
Saw was one of the only.
He was in the Clone Wars, like
between Star Wars Rebels, between Star Wars Clone Wars. Like you start to see this just absolute madman, and where he started and where he finished. You're like, okay, I understand kind of why the Alliance needed. This man was willing to do anything, anything for what he called the cause.
Yeah, and I will say Cassian's introductory scene in this movie makes a lot more sense having watched Andor season 2.
So much more
because
sense.
I forget what the guy's name is. Who gives him
on Tevik?
Tevik. Tevik's not. Tevik's the planet.
Tevik is the planet. Yeah.
Or Kerfine. Is the yes.
So the Ring of
Tevik is the. So we have the movie playing on mute behind us right now, just so you know.
Sorry, Tevik is the guy they meet on the Ring of Kafrine.
That's what it is. And after he gives him the intel about the Death Star, like he tells him, like, no, this is like what we've been waiting to find out. Cassian shoots him in cold blood. Now watching that before Andor came out, I was not a Cassian fan. I do not find him to be.
A lot of people were like,
well, and okay, I have to say, watching the behind the scenes stuff, they made such a big deal out of Diego Luna's casting to the point where it felt like they were just kind of trying to check a box. They said, we have Diego Luna, and he's Mexican. He's from Mexico. We got a guy from Mexico in this movie. Just so you know. No, I'm just saying, like, okay, why can't you focus on the fact that he's a really good actor? And we got Diego Luna, and he already had a lot of screen credits to his name.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we're just gonna leave it at that. Okay.
Well, I have more to say on that later.
Very unique accent.
Yes, and we have to give him a whole backstory just to explain his accent. But he shoots Tevik in cold blood.
He couldn't climb out of the hole. They were stuck in an alleyway.
But having watched Andor, it makes more sense why he's so used to having to make the hard decisions.
If that whole, because I know the first time I watched this, I was like, okay, that whole sequence moves so fast. I was like, okay, they're introducing us to characters and stuff that I don't understand, but I'm gonna go with it. Mm-hmm. And then Andor kind of brought it back, and they're like, okay, here's this character, here's their story, this is why they did what they did, and you're like, I get it now.
But even having said that, when we watched this, Samantha had never seen Rogue One. She had only seen Andor. When he shoots this guy, Samantha's like, did Cassian turn bad? Why is he even
it seemed a bit like it was like for him.
Yeah. But
at moments and that's why anyway, we're gonna
so when Jin is meeting with Rebellion, we reunite with Mon Mothma. And this was a really big deal at the time that Genevieve O'Reilly was given a second chance at playing this character. It was amazing.
You've talked about that.
I love it. I love that they did that. I feel bad for her that they gave her the Pete Wentz 2006 hairdo
Oh, that's...
from Fall Out Boy. I kind of want to do a side-by-side of their hairstyle.
I just feel like, do they not have hair products in the Rebellion? I mean,
It gets me. I think they were really trying to say, like, hey, this is the same woman from Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
But then it's also saying, like, hey, she goes with this hairstyle and does not change her hair or her clothes for, like, the next 10 years.
Which is it's weird because in Andor she had it all the time. She had like hairdos.
I think they were really trying to give her the glam treatment in Andor because they're like, hey, we're about to do you really dirty in the end here. So
Let's go to a rebellious where you're gonna be living in the forest. You can't afford gel. You can't afford nice clothes. You're gonna afford,
you know what? Like, your life's gonna suck, sis. I'm sorry. I want to say too, Felicity Jones. I already said I love her acting. Jyn is not like an in-your-face feminist character either, in my opinion.
agreed.
But Felicity Jones, she actually also gained so many points with me because she spent so much time preparing for this role. She already loved Star Wars coming into this production.
Really?
She's an actual fan, and she said in one of the official, bonus feature interviews that she spent so much time on Wikipedia
Oh, good for her.
verifying her facts.
Really?
And everything. I was like, I can't clap hard enough. With that.
That's huge. I mean, when was the last time? I mean, even Boyega,
Boyega. Oh, Tom Boyega. Yeah,
he's such a big fan and stuff. And then you watch some of the interviews, you're like, you're such a poser.
he is a hater.
Whereas, like her, it's like, okay, you spent the time.
And she has even said, like, no, I would totally do Star Wars again. Like, she wants to come back and do it. Like,
Well,
it was
kind of awkward. We killed your character.
Well, I can see like why they didn't include her in Andor. They didn't want to take away from Cassian's story at all. Maybe we'll see her again in some like other prequel series.
I mean, her character and her archetype, like they have a really good. The hard part is I forget the actor's name for Saw Gerrera, but
Forrest Whitaker.
he's already getting old. I mean, like you're not gonna be able to de-age him too much.
Again, Yavin 4.
Unless, okay, could you stop with the title cards? Okay, so
they go on their mission.
So, long story short, they're like, go to Jeddah, go talk to Saw Gerrera, go have the introduction with him. So they do. They Cassian hops in with, and we meet this one of the best characters of the entire movie, K2SO, who's played by
Alan Tudyk.
Who is just,
he's been in a lot of things as a character actor.
hands down one of the best characters of the entire movie.
Some production notes here. John Knoll, who created the treatment for this. He came up with this idea of K2SO intentionally as an anti-C3PO. Whereas 3PO was 3PO is all prim and proper, and he's kind of like the bumbling comedic relief. But I loved how he went in that direction with it. And Alan Tudyk, apparently he improvised a lot of his lines.
He did. And you can actually see some of the in the takes. You can see,
and all of his stuff was mocap, motion capture. He was on stilts, but even for scenes where like he couldn't feasibly be on stilts, like some of the action sequences, they rigged a backpack with 2 sticks coming out of the back with a cardboard cutout of K2SO's head for people to use as an eyeline reference. And even Alan Tudyk was saying, he's like, ILM came up with this. Like, this is 4th grader
cardboard.
And they were just laughing about it. But they said, like, hey, it worked. And whatever they needed to do to make it happen. But one thing I love, Alan Tudyk, he said he loved being able to bring humor to this movie, and what really sells it is K2SO's just delivery of everything.
No,
like,
he does.
It's so good.
Is crazy because if you've seen any of Tudyk's other works in like Knight's Tale or Firefly or stuff, he kind of has this bumbling side character energy, whereas K2SO kind of carries this disrespected main character. I don't know how else to care.
I don't
like
so.
because he has like all of the great like sarcastic dialogue and stuff.
It's all in the sarcastic and the dry.
But it's only for Joe. It's very level, whereas typically his character is very, and maybe it's just because K2 doesn't have a mouth, but so much of Alan Tudyk's acting is in his kind of like,
Well, even when he said like, "I won't leave you, Jin," or like, "I'll stay with you, Jin," Cassian said I had to.
so like Alan Tudyk's acting in his eyes, in the verbal like the words, is just amazing.
And this leads me to just a little tangent, just a little one.
Just a little tangent.
We're gonna get through this, people. I promise.
We
will. I think Rogue One's use of humor fits best with the Star Wars franchise's overall use of humor, because Star Wars has never been quite sure how to handle humor. You'll notice, like, we've gotten both ends of the spectrum.
Oh,
right?
Fortunately, yes.
We've gotten, like, Jar Jar level humor, like, downright stupid humor that only 5-year-olds would laugh at.
Unfortunate.
We've gotten the other end of the spectrum where they, like, in The Last Jedi, I realized with The Last Jedi, they were trying too hard to be like Marvel. Kind of like the awkward, self-aware, tongue-in-cheek humor. I think of like, or even The Force Awakens when Poe's like, "So who talks first? You talk first, I talk first." Or in The Last Jedi when they do like the phone call with
Yes.
what's his name? The redhead.
I can't think of his name.
Oh my goodness, what's his name? Look it up. The
Redhead in Star Wars.
But that phone call, for lack of a better word, where he gives his whole speech and then they just play it up like, what? I get it. I get why it's funny, but that type of humor feels so out of place in Star Wars. Now, granted, it's Marvel.
General
Hux. Thank you.
That whole bit with the, I'm sorry, you're on mute,
With General Hux. They're like, oh, what?
But the thing is, all that humor is so forced. It feels canned and fake.
It's funny, but it doesn't fit in with the rest of the Star Wars humor that we're used to.
Yes.
And Marvel's signature humor style is that. Marvel's signature humor style is the awkward, self-aware, tongue-in-cheek type of humor.
They're based out of comic books.
And even if you...
in that universe.
And even if you don't like that type of humor, at least Marvel is consistent with it. Star Wars has never been consistent with its style of humor. For me personally, Star Wars has always done its best with dry humor.
Yes.
I think I think of episode 4 where Luke and Han and Chewie are leaving and 3PO's like, "What do we do?" And Luke's like, "Lock the door." Or he says,
So dry.
Yeah, and
Like-
in Return of the Jedi, when Luke's like, "I used to live here," and Han's like, "You're gonna die here," I love when, like, I think that's
Incredible.
I think that's Star Wars' best use of humor, like with dry humor. So K2SO, So K2SO brings that back. He brings back the dry, sarcastic humor, and I think that's what works well.
Well said.
Thank you.
I think K2 brings us back to our roots. The Star Wars, the humor that we expect from a Star Wars film. This kind of dry, wry humor.
Right. So they go on their adventure.
We're gonna jump a little bit here.
Yeah.
So we cut to Jeddah. We meet a couple of awesome side characters, Chirrut, Baze. We cut into, and we're really cutting some time here. So much of this exposition, storyline, it's so well told. The graphics, the color, everything is amazing.
Well, I have to say, Chirrut and Babe.
Part of the story that comes in is that there is a Imperial pilot that turns rogue, Imperial pirate that defects. And he has information regarding the giant Imperial weapon that is to be. So he turns himself into Saw Gerrera, and he's like, "I have this information. I need to talk. I'm coming from Galen Erso sent me. I need to talk to Saw." Eventually, we find out that Saw's like, "All right, I can't believe you. I'm gonna put you in this like pit with the
Oh yeah,
his name is Bodhi Rook." So we're gonna
That's the pilot's thing.
we're gonna put you in the boar gullet, which is basically this giant squid that kind of like can sense if you're being honest or lying.
Kind of a torture tactic.
Long story short, they put him in prison in Saw Gerrera's kind of like camp.
And quick tidbit on what's his name, Bodhi. His actor Riz Ahmed, he had sent in like 20 self audition tapes.
This guy really wanted
to Gareth Edwards. He was like, or this could be another way to interpret the character. And even after he had already gotten the role, he kept sending the tapes in.
He kept
saying,
sending tapes in?
This is another way. He got the role. This is another way we could do the part. This is another way we could do the part. And he was like, afterwards, like, all right, so like, I might have done a little much, but I was just excited. Okay.
I love this guy.
But it leads to,
We have a couple of great cameos there in Jeddah. We see Jeddah. It's a bustling city. The Empire is running through. They're obviously like mining and taking something out of the city. We have a couple of great little cameos from Dr. Avazin and Ponda Baba, which we've only ever seen in Star Wars Episode 4.
that was the, you just watch yourself.
We have some of these fantastic lines like Cassian.
Wait, who was the doctor? You said
Dr. Avazin. He's the well, watch yourself. And then his friend, the ugly monkey.
Oh, he was okay.
Ponda Baba.
Yes. Hey, you just watch yourself.
They have books in the expanded universe. They have sequence, like they have a whole lore that Disney unfortunately deleted.
Well, yeah, as they
It's
do.
an expanded universe,
Okay.
kind of.
Well, let's just take a breath for a second. Let's just take a breath. It's okay. We're gonna get through this.
So at this point, we meet Chirrut. Chirrut, one of the best characters in the movie. He's this blind. He's actually a will. Whill. He's one of the wills, which are non-Jedi but Force-sensitive, kind of like toadies, like groupies for the Force.
Right. He was a guardian.
He was a guardian of the will.
Whill. Yeah.
So Jeddah was one of like the main planets the Jedi inhabited. It's like the Kyber crystals are harvested there. It's like a Force center.
And they need that power for the Death Star. And I want to say he's played by Donnie Yen, and then Baze is played by Jiang Wen. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. Apparently, these two actors had worked together before. They're very big in Chinese media, so they knew they could already kind of play off each other's chemistry there.
Because it was either going to be him or Jet Li.
Right.
He actually wanted a $10 million contract, whereas he wanted a $4 million contract. So that's why they offered it to him.
Yeah, sure.
He actually came up with the idea about the character being blind.
Oh, okay.
So he he offered that insight.
Well, so
and went with it. So
Jiang Wen, who played Baze, he really did not know English at this point. He said he had to have his son read the script for him, and his son was the one to tell him, like, no, Dad, you have to do this. You have to do this.
Really?
If you watch interviews with him, at least around that period of time that this movie was made, his English is very broken. And so I thought that was really cool how he still...
Well, his son convinced, like, he wasn't going to take it, but his son was
right.
like, no.
And where these two characters succeed, Baze and Chirrut, I have to say, when we were watching this, Samantha, my wife, she looked at me and she said, "That's you and Dave." I said, "I'm sorry. What? I was like, "But who is who?" She said, "I don't know who is who, but it's just you and Dave."
Besties to the end,
But I like how they did make them a true duo in the sense that I don't want to watch one of them without the other.
Agreed.
Even because at the point where Chirrut dies and sacrifices himself, and then it's just Baze. Baze is like finishing things off. I'm like, I don't want to watch just Baze.
You don't watch Baze.
Yeah, like he's no fun without Chirrut, and Chirrut is no fun without Baze there to kind of like rain on his parade, almost like, all right, you're full of it. Like, would you just
They
stop?
have this fantastic kind of
Like they function
journey energy. Like you can't have one without the other.
They function as one character. But Jin is reunited with Saw, and Forrest Whitaker.
We get a little bit more background.
Yeah.
Saw basically raised Jin from when they gathered her at the opening scenes of the movie. We actually have a couple of flashback sequences about that. But
not enough to tell us anything substantial.
nothing substantial. She gets mad. She's like, you abandoned me. He's like, I had to. It was the only way for you to survive. I knew you could do it on your own. But he's like, it has to be a lie. This whole thing has to be, a facade. And she's like, what? He's like, your father sent me a message. And it's like, bro, just show her the message. So eventually Jyn watches this transmission, this hologram from her father, Galen Erso, which basically says, like, Jyn, if you're watching this,
My Stardust. Yeah.
that was a whole lot of hinting at that Stardust. Like, they've kidnapped me. I'm working on this project, but I rebelled. Like, I've lied. I've been in secret the entire time. Like, I've built a secret weapon into the, a trigger. I've built a trigger mechanism into this entire thing. If you just hit the exhaust port system, the whole thing will blow up like
It was intentional because that was a plot hole that people
was a
complained about. Why was the
big
Death
plot
Star so easy to destroy? But this did a fairly decent job.
Then the whole thing, okay, well, had an inside man. The main engineers over the entire project said, I'm going to blow this thing up from the inside out.
Now, I have to say, and they established, okay, Saw and Jyn, they have the past. Forrest Whitaker, watching these interviews, he was very confident in the choices he made for Saw, like, down to the way he talked and the way he moved. If you like it, fine.
No, we're not talking about your personal opinion about Saw.
I can't stand it. I personally just can't stand Saw Gerrera. I'm sorry. I know for some he is a beloved character.
I know.
And it just comes off as so needlessly over the top. And Forrest Whitaker, he was very confident / proud of the choices he made. But listen, if you're trying to earn any sort of acting nomination, don't try to do it in a Star Wars movie.
Yeah, I give you that.
Like, this is not a time or the place.
Because I feel like Star Wars movies, like, your character should always be overshadowed by the overarching story.
Right.
Like, I think of Star Wars Episode 4, Episode 5, 6, like, their acting ability was fully overshadowed by the overarching story that they were participants in. Which a good story, now I give you, a good story should do.
It should.
Now, if you don't have a good story, then it should all be about character development, which the character drives everything.
And that's what we're all about here at Mysteries on Demand.
You do have good actors that can do that. Like Chirrut and Baze. They didn't have, they weren't overtly contributing to the main storyline, so they could kind of contribute in their characters. Okay, with that being said, I understand Saw Gerrera is kind of a sensitive topic because, like, in earlier versions and stuff, I found him just kind of a needless side character. Kind of like, who was the other bounty hunter or pirate in,
Hondo?
Hondo. One of them. I hate him. Hated him from the first house. I was like, this is the worst character.
I don't hate him as a character, but he feels out of place.
In the same way that you don't like Saw Gerrera, I don't like Hondo. In the years...
It's fair.
Thank you. Okay, well, there we go. We can agree on that. Over the years that they've kind of expanded their character and showed backstory and stuff, I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I can respect the character for who they are. I personally don't like them, but Saw Gerrera has grown on me.
Good for you. I want to make one prediction.
You bet.
One prediction.
Oh, here we go.
Whatever live-action series Dave Filoni produces next. Lean with me, okay? Hear me out.
Okay.
Whatever live-action series Dave Filoni produces next, we are going to see a live-action Hondo.
Why would you say that out loud?
It's gonna happen. Anyway, so the base is destroyed. We see the end of Saw Gerrera. I will say, okay, the moment where they play back sorry. The moment where they
Wind back.
Okay.
So you have on the Death Star, Krennic.
No, I'm still talking about the scene with Jyn and Saw. I'm taught that well, before that, we see Galen's message played back for Jyn.
Yes.
I will say Felicity Jones sells it. It is a genuinely emotional.
If we're going to talk about individual actors' ability,
Yeah.
she does an amazing job.
So anyway,
For being, I think at this point, 42?
oh, Mad, his name. She wasn't 42 when this was made.
No,
Absolutely not.
she is older than you would expect.
No, she is not.
Put it like that.
No, okay, I'm looking it up. Felicity Jones is. She's only 41 now.
Okay.
So 9 years ago, she was 32.
Okay.
She was my age. You think she was old?
Okay, that was a long time ago. But she was, I mean, she plays a very young character in this movie.
Yes. But then they decide to test out the Death Star's capabilities on.
Okay, you are getting to that. Very good.
Yes.
Very good.
Where are they? What planet are they? Jedha. And
So they talk about destroying the holy city with a single engine ignition. Because, so the whole conversation that happens on the Death Star is Admiral, can't think of his
Director Krennic.
Director Krennic is there, and he's like, "This is my achievement. This is our, it's fully satisfactional. The Emperor will be so pleased." And who's
Governor Tarkin.
Governor Tarkin. That's
Good Lord,
Sorry,
Dave.
I am really blanking tonight. So Governor Tarkin is like, you've had holes, you've had leaks. This is
Given the rebels time.
rebels time. And Krennic is like, well, then let's just like prove it. Let's just show it off and stuff. So Tarkin's like, all right, like let's just blow up Jeddah as a demonstration of power that our facility is operational.
Now,
He's like, okay, let's do that.
now this leads me to my biggest
This is
gripe
biggest
with the movie. Yes.
This?
Yes, absolutely. I will die on that hill. Because the CGI on Tarkin, I thought maybe I was being too harsh. 9 years later, where
Doesn't hold up.
where the technology has become so much more advanced, it does not hold up. Now, it works great as a video game cutscene, but even just his movements, where it's very
Okay.
took me out of all of his scenes, and I mean every single one. I was not listening to a line of dialogue because all I was focused on was this CGI, and
That bad.
I can tell watching the behind the scenes they put so much effort into it, but it's still all you can think of when you watch these scenes. I get the dynamic that they're trying to play up between Krennic and Tarkin, where it's a power struggle, and like we saw in Andor, it's always a need to get credit for everything. I have to say, the guy who played Peter Cushing's stand-in was Guy Henry. Would it have been so horrible to just use him as he is? When you look this guy up, he already has the cheekbones. That's like the defining feature of Tarkin. And he did the voice. With just a little bit of makeup, they could have just had him play Tarkin.
Stand in.
Because, and I get it, there's no way to win here because you really can't tell this story without Tarkin. I can see why he needs to be in it.
Well, because he played such an intrinsic part in Star Wars Episode 4.
Ooh, intrinsic, good word.
Is that the good word of the episode?
Yeah. But even in Revenge of the Sith, they showed Tarkin at the very end. The actor's name was Wayne Pygram. I think that's how you say it.
Pegram?
But I get it, because this takes place, literally as A New Hope starts. But for me, that was all I could focus on when I saw this in theaters. It does not hold up. And
Yeah.
I was watching the behind the scenes. John Knowles said their biggest goal with these, CGI models of these characters, they didn't want the audience to watch this and feel like something was off. I will say this is the one thing he failed at. Because
more than anything, I feel it was the lighting. I don't feel like it
the lighting throws it off. Yeah.
and modeling like everything was spot on. Like you could see the pores on the skin's textures, and the lighting is just off. And I understand lighting in Star Wars is tough. You have capital ships, or you have sunsets. You have like dramatic scenes where lighting is really, really tough. But you would think in these situations that they would have like put the character in a situation where the lighting could have been controlled.
It's so hard to watch. And even when my wife and I watched it, she had never seen this before, and it had been, decades since she'd seen A New Hope. So I didn't say anything to her that this was CGI. She didn't say anything when we watched Rogue One. So I thought, you know what, maybe it's better than I thought, the CGI. Then when we watched A New Hope immediately after, and it was Tarkin's first scene in A New Hope, she said, "Did they CGI him in the last movie?"
Oh, yeah. Tell us yourself.
I said, yes. She was like, okay, because I felt like something was off.
Well, something what? Yeah.
So,
Which I think that's the real tell is if you go, and it's not fair.
if a somewhat casual fan can tell, then that should tell you everything.
Okay.
But they are just trying to play up the power struggle between Krennic and Tarkin, which I understand that is a big.
But it just, I mean, at some level, which I understand at the level they're at, it just feels like grade school politics. Like it just feels like students yelling at each other.
That's, for me, Krennic is way more intimidating in Andor than he ever is in this movie. In Andor, he is the guy like, whoa, the boss is in. Do not mess with him. No one misbehave. In Rogue One, he just comes across more like a petulant 12-year-old.
He's a little bit, impulsive and kind of whiny, like throughout the entire series, and with good reason. There are moments when Krennic like is approached by like Darth Vader, and he's like visually unsettled. Like he's visually anxious, and you're like, okay, you're talking to Lord Vader direct. That's one thing. But when he's like up against like in a room of his peers and stuff, and he's just kind of
his underlings, his subordinates.
He's groveling with them. You're like, okay, this is not the Krennic that I know. This is not the Krennic that like we are, we're so familiar with from Andor. That is so kind of confident and self-assured, with him and his entire project.
Yeah, and I will say Vader only appears in like 3 scenes in this whole movie, but his presence is felt, and I thought the way they utilized him was really well done. James Earl Jones does sound like he's in his 90s by this point.
Yeah, he gets there.
But the fact that he kept coming back and coming back and coming back as long as he did is pretty respectable.
Yeah.
So anyway, they go back to Yavin 4 and report back all of this information. Jen even calls Cassian out. She's like, "So you were gonna kill my dad, weren't you?" Or no, they haven't gotten to this part. Sorry.
So that comes a little bit later. So
let's get our bearings here. Let's go.
Governor Tarkin, he's like, all right, let's just roast Jeddah with a single cannon blast. We're going to just test out the Death Star. We're just going to blast Jeddah with a big boom.
A big boom.
So they have the big boom. And the shock wave actually goes all the way out to Saw Gerrera's base. So the whole area is just crumbling in this massive giant like shock wave. At which point, like Cassian breaks out of prison. They grab the pilot. Yeah, they grab Baze. They grab Bodhi. They grab.
Sure.
He runs up and he's like, "We gotta go."
Yeah.
So they flee. They hop on the U-wing and they fly out of Jeddah moments before the entire area just floods over, and we see Saw Gerrera kind of in the last moment just kind of let's go. And he kind of gives up. He kind of surrenders.
Just kind of resigns to his
He's like,
there.
I've run long enough.
Yeah, and he even says to George, like, "Did you come to kill me?"
The whole, okay, we're not gonna go into that whole, the whole like. But the one thing I do appreciate about Saw's like entire character, and we saw that a lot more in Andor, is the entire like, even in the insurrection, you're not just stuck with loyalists the entire time. You do have double players, triple players, people that are playing for the Empire, but actually for the, and the whole kind of like, and Saw becomes terrified to the point that
like
paranoid to the point that you can't trust anyone.
Yeah.
So kind of finally put him to rest and just be like, all right, you're retired. Like, you're like,
It's over, man.
he's
Yeah.
happy to be kind of retired.
He was happy to die for the cause, which is what he always said he would do.
Cassian and the whole gang goes back to Yavin, and they kind of talk through, and at this point, it is Jin's word against everyone else.
Yeah.
Because Jin is like, she's the only one that actually saw the hologram from her father.
And I will say this is where they did a good job of tying Rogue One into Andor, because you can see why Cassian is skeptical in the movie. He said, listen, they're never going to believe you, because they didn't believe it in Andor when they brought Cleia's intel to the rebel base. And so they did a good job of showing like Cassian's backstory motivation there.
So at this point, they have a scene on the Death Star where Governor Tarkin admits or tells Krennic, he's like, look, you are incapable. You're not handling this well. There was a leak on Edau. There was hints that there was an Imperial pilot that escaped with information. And Krennic was like, I'm going to go deal with this. So he runs off.
Yeah.
So he flies out to Edau. Back on Yavin 4, Cassian lands. Jin's like, I saw this hologram with my dad. There's this giant Death Star. There's this battle plan and stuff. And they're like, look, we didn't see a hologram. Do you have the hologram?
Yeah.
All we have is your word against everyone else's. They're like, we can't do anything without viable information. Which at this point, I'm like, okay, that's fair, because so much of this is like this cloak and dagger work and stuff.
Well, let's say watching Rogue One before Andor came out, I was like, man, Cassian's just kind of a buzzkill.
Whole time.
But now, having seen Andor before this again, it adds more logic to his reasoning here. Like, hey, like do you realize how much is at risk and how much is at stake here? We cannot go off of just your words.
So eventually, General Draven is like, look, take Jin, go to Edau, find her father, and then as a side, they're like, Jin, we're gonna save your father. Then he turns to Cassian. He's like, we're going to kill her father. Okay. And so he's like, look, go to Edau. He's too valuable a target. You got to get rid of him. So they hard cut to Edau. They fly in. You got K2. You got Chirrut. You got Baze.
The whole gang is there, yes.
They do this like, and again, the graphics are just incredible. This whole sequence in the rain and
I
stuff.
will say the visuals in this movie are incredible. And like I said, even just like the small choices they made with how they framed things, even like the scope of the size of the planets, the scope of the size of the Death Star, even like I said before, like the way they angle the Death Star makes it more intimidating, and you feel
ILM did
the scope of the movie.
The only thing they didn't do well was the digital recreation.
Well, I was saying that, like, you know, even like the way they recreated the full Rebel base on Yavin 4, it looks amazing. Like they put so much thought and detail into everything, even down to the X-wing that they had on the set.
Which were actually cardboard cutouts.
Yeah.
Life-size cardboard cutouts, which is what they did during the production of Star Wars episode.
And they wanted to be able to shoot that base like 360. Like, no, we wanted to feel like, you know, you could just turn and you were in the same spot. But where they did choose to use CGI was another story.
Okay, we'll talk about that later.
Go on, yes.
So they get to Edau, and Cassian's like, "Hey, Bondi, you and me, we're gonna go scope the area out." At which point, Chirrut kind of asks a question of Baze. He's like, "Does he look like a killer?"
He's like, something's
And
up.
Baze is like, "No, he doesn't." At which point, Jin is like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa! What do you mean he looks like a killer?" And then Chirrut has this great line. He says, "The Force moves darkly around a creature that's about to kill." At which point, Jin is like, she knows something's up. So Jin runs out after them. And then Chirrut and Baze goes out. So everyone leaves the ship against direct orders. The whole thing kind of comes to a head when Krennic shows up at the Edau research facility. And Krennic gathers all the engineers together with Galen Erso and the entire Stormtrooper cadre. And he's like, look, there's been a leak. May the perpetrator step forward. And nobody steps forward. So Krennic, in a drastic move of Imperial silencing issues, is like, all right, shoot them all. At which point Galen comes out. He's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Wait, it was me. It was me the entire time. I did everything.
It was me, everyone.
Krennic being just the impetuous child that he is like, all right, kill all of them. They shoot him. And then he's like, Galen, why? Man, why? Like the whole thing.
Yeah.
At which point, we kind of skipped over this point because things moved fast, okay? Back on Yavin 4, they missed a message from Cassian and they said, okay, we need to just send a whole bunch of X-Wings and just smoke Idao. Just smoke the entire facility. We don't know what's going on there. We don't know what Cassian got in. We don't know if they're gonna cook Galen. They're like just bomb the whole facility. So they send a whole wing, a whole squadron of X-Wings and Y-Wings to just smoke all of it out. So you have this amazing, and again, this is the moments that you think like maybe this was Tony Gilroy just building the tension. Maybe this was some of the other directors and producers. The tension here is just so thick. So they have seconds on the clock against getting Galen out or trying to. So Jyn breaks away. She's climbing the tower. She's trying to save her dad. The X-Wings are coming. Cassian has the opportunity to snipe Galen, but he doesn't.
Yep.
Fast forward.
Galen
dies.
He dies in Jin's arms. And it is, again, the acting is very, very, very good here. They escape, they get back on the ship, and Jin's like, OMG, Cass, I can't believe you were legit going to kill my dad. And Cassian's like, don't even talk to me. And again, if you were to watch just Rogue One on its own without having seen Andor, you would think, wow, Cassian is a jerk.
Now, I do want to... Galen Erso is played by Matt Nicholson. And he, I feel like, is just such a stereotypical bad guy. Like,
he is.
We've seen him in
Casino Royale.
We've seen him in what was the other TV show? Like, we've seen him in
The Other Thing.
The Other Thing, you know, where he played that bad guy. And he just has such the stereotypical bad guy. This is the one role that he plays that he has this kind of
sympathetic
redemption arc.
Yeah.
You know, he kind of has this like bad guy that is trying to stick into the man.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, this is the first role that I actually kind of
he's great.
Know who you are. You are the bad guy. And,
yes.
You know, between the hair and the face, we know who you are. But this is the first time that his character, I feel like, has this redemption arc that you're like, okay, I kind of see where he's coming from, though.
No, it pays off. And but Cassian's like, yeah, you know what? I was going to do it. Anybody else have any complaints? And they're all just kind of awkwardly silent.
There's a couple of amazing scenes here. Chirrut absolutely smokes a TIE fighter.
Mm-hmm.
Jyn survives a bombing run and like gets to me. She gets a couple of final words with her father where she's able to confirm, like, look, I saw your message. And he's like, end it. I love you, Stardust. Like,
it is, you know, it hits hard. We got to keep it moving. They get back to Yavin 4 and they bring back this intel. And Cassian had even kind of told Jyn, like, they're not going to buy this. And surprisingly, they don't. Again, they are all just buzzkills. Like, Mon Mothma is the only one willing to lend a listening ear. Everybody else is like, what? No, you're stupid. This whole thing is stupid. I'm like, why did you form the rebellion?
The whole time.
If you're just not going to want to do anything. And I get it, like, you know, they're paranoid. They are scared. Then it's frustrating to watch. But I get it. There's one guy, I forget his name. I know he gets killed off later in the movie. But he especially is like very anti, like, no, we're not going with her plan. He's standing right next to her. I wish I could remember his name. So they
General, I forget his name.
Yeah,
he was kind of a tool.
You look it up. Mon Mothma tells Jyn, like, I'm sorry, but you know, without the full support, we just can't go along with this. So Jyn leaves this meeting, and Cassian actually meets up with. He's like, all right, you know what? Everything I did for the rebellion.
I think General Merrick, just an absolute tool.
Can I see?
Literally, he has.
I think that might have been it.
He's like, no, this rebellion is lost.
Right. Like, you know, it's just like, you know, doom and gloom. But Cassian, he says, like,
Well, they're contrasting. You have a sequence with Darth Vader meeting with Krennic, and Darth Vader is like, "Look,
Not to choke.
one of the best lines in the entire movie."
it's okay.
The point of that
It's okay.
is Krennic meets up with Darth Vader on this like secret base, and I guess on Mustafar on some planet. And Darth Vader is like, "Look, the Death Star will continue to remain a secret. We've hidden it from the entire Senate. We've said that Jeddah was a mining accident. We are not talking about it." At which point Krennic is like, "So I'm still in charge, right?" Like in his typical 12-year-old, like, "I'm still in charge, right?"
Because it's all about getting credit
The whole thing.
and saving face.
So Darth Vader's like, "Look, just do your job, you know."
Like, bro, chill. So
At
they,
which point Jin, back on the Avant,
Yes.
Jin has an amazing speech about rebellions are built on hope, and you need to listen to me because I have, like, my father would not have gone through so much. At which point the Alliance guys are like, "Look, this is not enough intel for us to do anything about."
yeah. But then Cassian
Frustrating.
meets up with her and he's like, actually, you know what? Everything I did for the rebellion. Which, again, this whole movie hits so much harder having watched Andor.
Agreed.
Because Cassian really, like, you believe him when he said, everything I did for the rebellion.
When you watch this, his speech, honestly, it felt empty.
Right. But now it carries so much more weight.
Agreed.
You know, he actually did lose everything and he's ready to rebel against the rebellion.
So he's like, "Hey, we have like a dozen, 2 dozen guys. Let's go." So Bondi's like, we can all fit in the ship. Let's just jet. So they all hop on the ship. They fly out. They have the perfect like little title sequence where they have the radio transmission like, "What are you doing? You're not cleared for transport." And Bondi's like, "Well, we're Rogue One. We're Rogue. We're Rogue One. Okay, bye." And they fly off. But that gives you the title, the movie title and stuff. So
Which I saw one reviewer who said, hey, you know, it's better than how Han Solo came up with his name in Solo, a Star Wars story.
Oh my lord.
But anyway, we're not talking about that. But we got to keep it moving. So they make their way to Scarif. Because that's where they're going to retrieve the plans for the Death Star.
Right. That's where Galen Erso has stored the final copy for the entire Death.
That's where everything is going to go.
Engineering plans, and plumbing, and the electrical, and all the
So it's kind of like a nice little callback to the fake prisoner thing they did in A New Hope almost. Jin and Cassian, they disguise themselves.
I did read an interesting fun fact that the name Scarif comes from a coffee shop that Gareth went to when he ordered a coffee and they got his name wrong and they wrote it Scarif. He said, "That sounds funny. It kind of sounds like Scarif." And then they said, "Oh, Scarif, that's a good planet."
How did you get that from Gareth?
Gareth to Scarif to Scarif.
Nice.
Now that's how we're continuing.
And even like to the point they're going up the elevator, K2SO, he starts to say, I have a bad feeling. And they're like, no.
They're like, "Shh, stop. No talking."
I liked that.
like,
I have to say. We really got to move it along here. But again, this is where the tension really starts to build up. Now, this third act of the movie, I have to say, is probably one of the best third acts of any Star Wars film ever.
Agreed.
If not the best. I don't want to
Agreed.
go on record as saying that it is the best.
No,
But it's pretty amazing.
within the 5 minutes here, they're like, "All right, let's go." So they have kind of the deployment. They drop the ship. They're flying kind of like Episode 6. They're flying in an Imperial shuttle. They fly into Scarif using stolen codes. They land on the planet. All of the rebel soldiers kind of like spread out and they like hide until the right time. Jin and Cassian and K2 kind of steal costumes. They start heading towards the tower to try to get access to the vault, the data vault, to get the information.
And it really does feel like a war movie at this point. Like
At this point, the third act turns into basically a Vietnam conflict, like in World War II. And actually,
they really were going for a World War II feel.
the early like screenplays and the early like shots list. They actually used footage from Vietnam and World War II.
Interesting, yeah.
They just superimposed like the helmets and the backgrounds onto these kind of Star Wars characters.
Yeah.
So you actually have this very vintage. A lot of the islands here on Scarif feel like Peleliu Island. They feel like the Philippines. You
They used a lot of different locations.
island feel. Which is again the tension in this entire, because it's not just a war movie. It's this kind of like Cold War Black Ops. Like we have the secret code. We gotta transmit it. Dispersed inside of this like little Vietnam.
This is where it really turns into like a Les Mis / Hamlet level tragedy. It really starts with K2SO.
Only have a certain number of people.
No,
Reinforcements are not.
It starts with K2SO sacrificing himself,
Oh, that was tragic.
which was hard to watch. It was hard to watch.
So they get to the data library. Jin and Cassian are starting to find like the hard drives and stuff. Cassian actually locks the vault. He's like telling them where to go, at which point like endless stormtroopers are raiding the vault because they start getting like flag emergencies. They're like, hey, somebody's in the vault. K2, sadly, Alan Tudyk's character just goes down in a smoking heap.
It's hard to watch, yeah.
And it's tragic, like just the whole sequence of like climb, goodbye Cassian.
I have to say,
he dies.
And I have to say two things. It was when I saw this in theaters initially, this was the point where my brother leaned into me and he said, "Oh, they're all gonna die." And I said, "Oh, you're right. You're so right."
That's when it hits, because you realize, wait a second, none of these characters are in any of the other movies.
They're not gonna. Wait, you mean they're not gonna run away and live happily ever after? They're not gonna be okay?
That's the moment earlier on where they close the gate, because Scarif is surrounded by this energy shield that's only surrounded by this.
And they even say, "Oh, now we're trapped here."
And they kind of had this conversation where like, how do we get out?
Yeah.
We can't get out. Like their plan was to fly in, fly out, but with the gate closed, they can't.
And I will say,
And at that moment was the beginning moments of like, okay, they're a rat stuck in a tunnel.
this is getting real now. And I will say, she's in the next room over, so she can hear me. But this was the point in the movie where my wife started to get emotional. And
To be fair, this was a heavy sequence of events.
and it does not let up from here. Where
It is moment by moment. You have
who's the next one? I think Chirrut.
we're gonna get there. So
We gotta move it along.
eventually the Alliance hears, like, they're like, hey, we're getting reports of an Imperial attack, like an attack on Scarif.
It might have been at this point Mon Mothma said to Bail Organa, like, "Hey, your Jedi friend, is he?"
And Bail Organa's like, I have somebody that I would trust I trust her with my life.
Yeah, he helped my daughter from a kidnapping scheme, but you're not going to hear about that for a while.
You start getting episode 4 hints. The Alliance mobilizes. They start sending X-Wing fighters. General Radis starts sending frigates. They all show up at Scarif. They start fighting. They finally get through a few. They start getting ground support. They start moment by moment. You have attack and stuff. Bodhi, unfortunately, he establishes there's a whole. I mean, the tension here is incredible. He establishes a connection up. He calls the Rebel fleet. He's like, hey, look, we have the Death Star plans. Well, we're gonna get them soon, but we're gonna transmit them. You need to be listening. So you need to get the gate open.
Yeah.
General Radis is like, all right, I have an idea. Body, apparently, he gets the connection established, but he blows up. To get the connection up for the tower to transmit the thing, Chirrut has to go and establish the connection. So
And this is...
walks through, and this sequence,
You know what's going to happen.
don't take our word for it. You have to see it.
You know what's going to happen. He's saying, "I'm with the Force and the Force is with me." And he's eating that. And Baze is saying, "What are you doing?" And
gets the switch on.
these two, they've had their own spin-off novels. I read.
They have.
But,
they've had some amazing...
But that's, and, you know, just after Chirrut does what he needs to do, of course, he meets his end. He dies in Baze's arms. That it is so sad.
Baze goes out.
Now,
Hang on. I have it here.
no, don't say it. What are you? I know what you're gonna say.
The Baze, after Chirrut's demise, goes out in a blaze of glory. Glory.
Stop.
He goes out. It's fantastic.
I have to confess one thing. And again, she's in the next room over. She can hear me. It was at, like, I think before this, it might have been around K2SO's death or Bodhi's death. I had taken out my phone because I was going to try to, like, record Samantha's reactions to realizing, like, that all these characters are going to die. But then right before I started recording, I looked over. She was sobbing. And I felt, but listen. I didn't think she would be sobbing like that. I thought she would be more angry. And so, but I looked over and I was like, oh God, let's see her reaction. And I looked over and she was just like kind of like curled up and like I see the tears running down her face. And I just like touched her. I was like, oh. And she just says, it's just so sad.
It is.
And my heart just broke. Then I started crying. And so then I just kind of held her, and we were both just kind of crying together, watching the final moments. But I think that speaks volumes about Andor, this series.
Gareth, well done.
Well, no. I'm sorry, Gareth.
Gilroy.
Yeah, more so Tony. I'm sorry, Gareth. Gareth, you did great. But listen, hear me out.
I'm hearing.
I think it speaks more volumes about Andor and having seen that leading up to this, because I don't think she would have reacted the same way without having seen Andor. Samantha, am I wrong?
I would not have.
Exactly.
No, I agree.
Yeah, and so I think realizing like, oh, whoa, and Cassian's
Came so far to die.
exactly, and realizing, oh, whoa, and Cassian's probably gonna die too. I'm not ready for this, and so this is where things just really get real.
Because things get ratchet. Okay.
Yeah. So ratchet. Okay, so Jin and Cassian, they get into the space, they get into the mainframe.
Where they just keep plucking at your heartstrings because they're like, I don't see there's like this project and they're going through the projects. They're like project this. And
We can't find the file name.
And then she's like, this is it. This is Project Stardust.
Yeah.
And Cassian's like, why? Why is that? And Jin is like, because it's me. And Cassian is like, oh.
I would have loved like I would have loved like an alternate cut. I would have loved like an alternate cut of him just like looking at her and be like, oh, shut up.
It's not you, okay? It's not Project
Jen, how much attention do you need? Go.
This little like started, and Cassian's like, all right, you know, let's pick. So they get it. So she has the hard drive. There's a whole thing with the Death Troopers. They start climbing to the top of the tower. Jin gets there. She has to like realign the antenna in order to get to the. It's just more tension.
Even though you know, like they're gonna get the plans there, like it's still very tense.
Building.
Yeah. And then
realign the antenna. At which point, General Radis is like, "Get me that start."
Krennic.
No, Radis.
Who's Radis?
He's like, they still haven't taken down the planetary shield. So he's like, call me up a Hammerhead starship, a Corvette. So they have two Imperial Star Destroyers right next to each other. The Y-wings like literally immobilized with their ion bombs. At which point they pull a Corvette up to the side and they just ramrod the one right next to the other, literally decapitating the top of a secondary Star Destroyer. And
Who's Radis?
the Mon Calamari general.
Oh, is that his name?
Yes! Have you not been watching this movie?
Sorry, go on. I'm just
Okay, so they decapitate the Imperial Star Destroyer. Both of them just kind of plummet into the gate. So the whole thing just blows up.
Oh, it is Radis. Okay.
Which point the signal can get out. So Jin and Cassian, there's this whole showdown with Krennic. Do we come?
Okay, yes, it is Radis. It is Radis, yes.
So Krennic is like, who are you?
Yes.
And Jin is like, you already know.
And she said, I am Iron Man. And she said, you know who I am. Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
There's somebody with Muppet there. Which point Cassian blasts Krennic. Jin and Cassian kind of vacate the area. They send They transferred the Death Star.
They airdrop the Death Star plans.
To the sky.
And I will say this moment where when they receive the transmission of the plans, you do feel that hope and
you feel the moment.
the score really does what it's supposed to do here. And even when Cassian says,
Incredible.
when Cassian says, "Do you think anyone's listening?" I think was also Andor the TV series did a nod to this, because I think at one point in one of the earlier episodes, Andor had said nobody's listening.
Yes.
But now he's realizing, do you think anyone's listening? Like he's feeling more hopeful.
And Jin is
And-
of course they're listening.
And even though, by this point, having watched Andor all the way through, Jin is just another side quest for Cassian at this point. But Cassian knows this is the end of his journey. And that's what makes it all the more heartbreaking when him and Jin just collapse on the shore and just kind of...
Okay, don't get ahead. Okay, so they
I have to
escape
get
the
ahead.
tower.
We have to
They
keep moving.
escape the tower. At which point, there's cut back to the rebels ship. They get a transmission. Sir, we're getting a massive object that just came out of hyperspace. No. Throughout the entire series, they've talked about the hyperspace capability of the Death Star. They've never once confirmed it through visual.
They've never shown it. Yeah.
They've never shown it, but they've talked about it enough to confirm the Death Star is hyperspace capable. So it shows up, at which point Governor Tarkin is like, snipe Scarif, the tower. Single generator blast will be enough.
Just to get the tower.
They have the shot where the Death Star literally just blows off the antenna of the tower, at which point kind of sets off the chain.
Along with everything else.
Explosion, the whole thing. So you have like 5 minutes. So Jin and Cassian are sitting on the shore. They see their end kind of coming towards them. There's a whole bunch of the rebels. They get the data, at which point we get the scene.
Well, so I will say, well,
I don't want to spoil it. I want to let you have that fair opportunity.
and I will say the way they played the death scene of Jin and Cassian, I thought was brilliant. And again, and I hate to sound like a broken record, it hits even harder having seen the entire Andor series, because it's like, whoa, this is how his journey ends.
You just kind of you imagine Cassian is like, okay, he's just like, Jin isn't just another love interest, he's just another rebel.
Because they don't they embrace, but it's not like a full-blown romance, because we know Cassian's got a kid on another planet.
Well, after and Vic too, we realize,
but I love the choice they made here to just have the explosion come over them and there's no music. It's like 5 solid seconds.
at what point the music stopped. I think it was
Right at the explosion. Like right when it takes them over. Right when it comes over them. And it's like 5 solid seconds of silence, and it hits so hard having seen everything now. It's so beautifully tragic. But then it leads to the scene, which, thanks to the 5 weeks worth of reshoots we got in this movie, Vader finds out
worth it.
Vader finds out that they have received these plans, and he is not happy.
They said they've received transmissions from the surface. So Darth Vader, this is the Darth Vader. This is episode 3 Darth Vader says, prepare a boarding party.
And it is not a party. This scene is
This entire sequence of the rebels, they get the data card. They're like, this is this little like credit card worth of data. This has everything that we need.
this thumb drive has everything we need. This floppy disk.
This has everything. So they're like, go, take this. And the door doesn't work. For some reason, the door has broken.
And then the music stops. They turn around. It's pure darkness. You hear the infamous breaths of Darth Vader, and you see his lightsaber ignite. And that's when all you know what breaks loose. And it is just pure terror from here on out. And this is...
Which is amazing, because this entire sequence is no more than 30 seconds.
It's like 30 seconds, probably, yeah.
And it is like nightmare fuel.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that's why I say this movie succeeded in making not only the Empire scary again, but also Darth Vader. Like, when you think about it, Darth Vader, when A New Hope was first released, nobody had ever seen anything like Darth Vader before. He was chilling, terrifying. Now, like, we've seen him in so many things, we've just come to take it for granted.
I had this in my notes. I've taken Anakin, Darth Vader, for granted so many times because he's such an, and I don't regret this at all. Darth Vader is an overused character. There is so much about him that it becomes like, and you see all these videos on like Disney, and they're like, oh yeah, come on kid, like let's be Darth Vader, and and he just kind of becomes your sideshow, fanfare, character. But Rogue One really like reinvigorated your like, this is what Darth Vader is about. This is the Iron Fist of the Empire.
And I think you kind of a lot of people complain about the prequels making Darth Vader into a whiny villain. This kind of undid all of that. It reestablished, like, no, wait, Darth Vader is scary for a reason. And it leads to the final scene in this film. And I have to say, I do get chills when they open the door and they reveal Princess Leia.
Agreed.
Just the back of her. Like, that costume. And you're like, whoa. That is crazy. Did they need to have her in this movie? No, absolutely not. It was not completely necessary. I understand why Tarkin was necessary. This build up, this is where the transition becomes apparent.
Seamless. You could pick up Star Wars Episode 4 right here, right now.
Which we did.
We
did. Samantha and I did. Immediately after watching Rogue One. I want to say it was like 2 a.m.
Yeah.
We had just finished Rogue One, and I remember watching Rogue One. She was like, wait, so did they make a movie about what happened after
And you're like, well,
I was like, did they ever?
Funny you should have.
And but it was late, so I said, well, just watch the first 5 minutes of A New Hope. But even watching the first 5 minutes of A New Hope, she was like, okay, so they did get the plans, right? They did get the plans. I was like,
they did.
I love how they did it. Mm-hmm. Now, I have to say, as far as the CGI goes, Leia does look more convincing than Tarkin, especially like in that first, like when she's not revealing her eyes to the camera or anything, like they show this smile, like she's like,
you're gonna talk about that, aren't you?
I have to.
Go ahead.
My biggest gripe with Leia, like it's almost but not quite, my biggest complaint is that the eyes are so dead. And I know even they relied on like the recording of her saying hope, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. They used that. I get it. It's cool. And it tied together the entire theme of the movie of rebellions are built on hope.
Hope, yes.
But and I will say, if you go on YouTube, people have done like their own edits improving this, and I've seen Snapchat filters that are more convincing than this.
To be fair, the amazing amount of work that ILM puts into these films and stuff, which is surprising considering how lackluster this one sequence is.
If you watch the behind the scenes footage, you can tell they did put 100% effort into this. I'm sorry, it just does not hold up, and it's more distracting than anything. And especially, I'm not Rolla. I acknowledge that. I will say it made me realize how much of Carrie Fisher's acting was done through her eyes. She has very expressive eyes. In every scene you watch, go back to the original trilogy. She was able to evoke so much emotion just through her eyes. Even though the dialogue was George Lucas dialogue and not the best, she sells the scene through her eyes. Yeah. But it was pretty cool that they were able to end it on that note. My last thing I want to say, in the behind the scenes footage, they showed clips from the premiere of Rogue One. This was where I felt that they were just kind of concerned with checking boxes. They showed a girl being interviewed saying, when I was a little kid, I wrote to George Lucas saying, I want to see more strong female characters. And she was dressed in like Jin cosplay and everything. And some girls were saying, yeah, they're making Star Wars for the girls again. Yeah. And if you line up the timelines a little bit, this was around the same time that Kathleen Kennedy was starting the Force is female campaign. I just want to say, whoever said Star Wars was just for guys? Nobody ever said that.
This is my first time hearing this.
You never heard about the Force is female campaign?
I've never been more offended
Bruh, look it up.
in my life.
Look it up. You will see Kathleen Kennedy wearing a t-shirt that says the Force is female. Why do you think we have had so many quote-unquote strong female characters shoved down our throats like that? Now, I will agree. The original movies, they do lack female characters. There's we've got Leia and Padme.
Okay, I give you that.
And maybe Mon Mothma. What other female character?
Padme Amidala is a strong independent
She is.
woman.
And so is Leia. I will say that. So I could see, there's not a lot of women at play here. However, did either of our sisters growing up ever complain that Star Wars didn't have enough female characters?
Never once.
And yet, didn't both of our sisters still love Star Wars?
Yes.
Didn't your sister still plan a whole Star Wars bachelor night for you?
Guaranteed.
So that was the only thing that
It's a
irritated me a little.
well.
But anyway, that was like the salt in the wound watching these behind the scenes featurettes.
Okay.
But anyway, that is Rogue One.
Well, I can't end on this, man. Sorry. So, overall thoughts, Rogue One. Standalone 2016. 2016 Sam Roberts. Thoughts on Rogue One?
I still have a hard time with the CGI Tarkin. I really do. But good writing, really good screenplay, really good acting. It still holds up pretty well. I would still recommend watching Andor before watching Rogue One. Now that we have everything that we do,
Agreed.
watch Andor before watching Rogue One, and it will hit much harder. But Rogue One is still, even without Andor, it's still a very solid movie.
Yeah. I hesitate to recommend that sequence. I would, if time was no object, I would still say watch Rogue One, watch Andor 1 and 2, and then watch Rogue One again. And then watch episode. You really should start.
But don't watch the sequel.
Now, if you really want, you should start with episode 1, 2, and 3, and then.
So first off, you have to get fired from your job and have all the time in the world.
You just have to dedicate 2 weekends.
And watch all 7 seasons of Clone Wars. I'm just kidding.
I just the thing was with watching Andor 2, watching Andor season 2, it's so good.
It is.
That is the thing. It is so enrapturing, and
Oh, yes.
I rarely use that word for a television show.
What if you ever used that word in rapture?
It never in my life, other than Andor season 2, it is enrapturing because I know I don't for me, once I started Andor 2, I couldn't stop watching it.
Right, yeah.
Your constant thought is what happens next? Who says what? Who does what? And then when you finish the season, you just have this, I don't know, this pall of satisfaction that you know what happened, but also emptiness that it's all. And then Rogue One picks right up where all of that left off. So you have this entire mixed bag of emotion that Rogue One takes, and it's let me take that from you and hold it for a few minutes and then give it back. So by the end of the movie, you're all right, I still have this mixed bag of emotions because
the conclusion of Andor was the first time that I felt sad that a series was over, because hopefully we get this same caliber of Star Wars series delivered again.
Don't let us out of failure.
I know, Andor, but listen, it's
yes, we will never get perfect.
okay, yes.
Back to Andor season 2, broke records on IMDb.
I understand.
They have not had a series that good.
Let me answer your question with a question. Andor was actually supposed to be 5 seasons. Did you know this?
I know.
but it got delayed because of pandemic. That's why they had to do the time jumps, like 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, which they handled it pretty well. But anyway, watch Rogue One. It does hold up. It's better than I remembered. The CGI, I'm sorry, does not. Everything else though is pretty solid and entertaining from start to finish. I do want to say before we conclude, we are gonna get back to murder mystery stuff. Okay.
Oh, we're talking about that now.
Okay. Yes.
To be fair, we're not only a Star Wars podcasting series. I think Star Wars is where our roots are really well founded. I think we're both nerds and fans of the series and stuff.
Don't call me name.
But murder mysteries are actually, you know, and I had meant to talk to you about that this week. I printed out a bunch of our kits this week to mail out to some friends. Actually, some of our subscriber winners. And just printing out some of the new media and stuff. Like, I forgot how good our kits are. Like,
They're really good. I don't want to toot my own horn.
I'm not to, and I don't mean this as any. Well, I don't mean.
No,
this
you
as
do,
any
you
publicity
do.
stuff,
You do.
But I'm like printing out this stuff. I was like, man, this material, like, it looks so good. I'm like,
I'm very proud of how...
I want to play this again, and
Yeah.
I know exactly how it ends. And I'm like, I want to play this, and I'm like, I'm looking at the maps, and I'm printing out the stickers, and I'm printing out the character cards. And I'm like, I wish I could play this again.
Well, the ski lodge...
Know who it was.
The ski lodge, I had to test that one out without you. I was really sad about that, so we still need to do that show could play. But I'm very proud of how far we've come with our kits. We have more ideas, you know, in the works.
We have a few.
We have a few.
You're excited for the next. Be on the lookout for the next Mysteries on Demand freebie party kit.
Yes, that is something very exciting. If you are into like the 5-minute mystery craze on TikTok, that's going to be right up your alley. And we will get back to murder mystery movie reviews on this podcast as well. We just also like talk about Star Wars.
We are coming up on actually doing a couple of classics.
Well, okay. So I said I was going
you want to talk about this right now?
So my wife and I are both kind of on a mission to reduce our screen time, particularly on Instagram. Which, well, you know,
Instagram, right? Instagram is a horror.
Well, also, American social media is what I do for a living, and so that is and I love what I do. But the only thing I don't enjoy is that it requires me to be on social media like
all the time.
24/7. So my wife and I, we've been watching through the Poirot series on BBC,
Right.
and I had come to the Murder on the Orient Express episode with David Suchet, and it got me thinking. There have been so many adaptations of Murder on the Orient Express.
There's more than one.
And there are 3 major ones. And it got me thinking, okay, which adaptation is the best adaptation?
Ooh.
That's
a hot topic.
But so it got me thinking about that. Now, there are things I like about all 3 adaptations. However, I had to admit to myself, I've never read the book. And I don't know if I should judge it based on which is the best actual adaptation or which is the best made film. So I was like, I'm going to get the book and I'm going to read through the book and then maybe I'll review.
So I'm going to borrow
either.
It, right? Okay, cool.
Well, I'm halfway through it. I
Thank you.
gotta finish reading it.
You're so nice.
But you could get your own copy.
Right.
It's surprisingly a pretty straightforward read. You can see where the adaptations kind of just strictly adapted it from that. But anyway, that's been a really fun project. And then I was like, I want to just read all the Poirot books. And so my wife was very gracious. She got me recently the very first story in the Poirot series from Agatha Christie, The Mysterious Affair at Styles. I know the story very well, but I'm excited to read it in its printed form. But I'm going to be reading through Murder on the Orient Express.
Long story short,
Yeah.
we are getting back into murder mysteries because murder is where our hearts are at.
Well,
I didn't mean that like that.
that's not a good way to put it.
Murder mysteries are where...
But if you get your own copy of Murder on the Orient Express,
You know what I mean.
or even the audiobook, maybe we'll talk about that on our next episode.
Awesome.
I've already taken my notes for Glass Onion. We'll be reviewing that soon.
That's going to be... Okay, consent on this.
This has been a long episode.
Lord.
This is definitely. I thought my
I
episode.
think our longest episode.
No doubt about it. I thought. Well, it's been a while since
Very long monologue.
Dave's return to the podcast was more grand than I expected. But
Dude, is this a record? Is this a record podcast?
2.5 hours. I would say so.
No, I don't think Rogue One was only 2 hours long.
This was longer than.
We literally watched through. I knew
When you were on your way here, I was thinking to myself, even just like taking my notes for the movie review, I was like, this is gonna be a long.
This is gonna be.
Did not think it would be this long, but
Here we are. There was so much about the movie that I was like, oh yeah, we can breeze through that. We can talk about that. We can kind of sum up. And yet here we anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for tying into a mystery
Mysteries on Demand.
Mysteries on Demand.
Let's commiserate.
Let's commiserate podcast.
Be sure to follow us on everything. Mysteries on Demand, all one word, TikTok, Instagram, and subscribe to us on YouTube. And
Sometimes I forget we're on YouTube. And it's like,
we are on YouTube.
my favorite clips.
Yeah. And we will see you guys in the next. Oh, I have to tell you. I have one more guest episode planned for this weekend. My friends Kyle and Clay and I, we're going to record an episode together.
Even like as a host, I am so looking forward to watching that episode. Like seeing that. You have Clay and Kyle.
Clay and Kyle. I thought we were going to record a full.
I talked to both of them separately about it, and they are both excited, but for completely different reasons. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Should I have you on it, or would that be too many cooks in the kitchen? I think us. Yeah.
I'm gonna let you three. That's gonna be a full house.
Yeah. So I haven't even decided like what we're gonna be talking about.
Good Lord.
So I feel like I'm just gonna press record and see what happens. But I'm so excited.
Actually, so Kyle, I know, is a huge fan of the Batman series.
I know. As am I. So that should be interesting. Christopher Nolan.
Christopher
Yeah,
Nolan
yeah.
series. Like they're gonna be amazing.
Anyway, thank
Clay,
you all.
I don't know.
Oh, Clay.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for tying in.
We love you, and we will see you on the next episode.